Shadows over Innistrad Remastered set review. I'm going to use the limited resources ranking system for reference. So A's are some of the biggest bombs in the sets, like the Eternal Wanderer. B's are great cards that pull you hard into that color, like Annex Sentry. C's are some of the regular cards that you put in your deck all the time, like Lattice Blade Mantis. These are cards you usually don't want to play, but you sometimes end up putting in your deck, like Cruel Remnant. And F's are completely unplayable cards like Mirran Safe House. Let's start by white here. We have Always Watching, which is 1 white for an enchantment that gives all your non-token creatures +1/+1 and have vigilance. So a little better than Glorious Anthem because it gives vigilance, a little worse because it doesn't give tokens plus, but on the about balance it's almost like a Glorious Anthem. And it is good, it's very solid. I think it's around a B+, and if you draft Always Watching, you want to have a lot of creatures in your deck. And it doesn't, most of the things that make tokens are usually fine anyway, but you want regular creatures, and having vigilance is very nice. It's very hard to get beaten up when you have this card. So I give it a B+, and you want to be creature heavy. Angelic Purge, 2 and a white for sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a permanent, and you exile target artifact, creature, or enchantments. Most of the permanents that matters in Limited. So this is not a card you want too many of. It's very nice to have an answer, but it's not good early because you're setting yourself back on the board. If you're sacrificing a land, you're back on tempo for the further drops, and you don't want to sacrifice creatures. It is nice that if you sacrifice a land, you're getting a card type for Delirium. So, for example, lands are kind of hard to get into the graveyard, and this gives you a sorcery and a land for Delirium, so that could be nice. I think it's around a C. You want one in every deck, but you often don't want more than one. It's fine to play 2 sometimes, and if you got some sacrifice synergies or expendable creature, it gets a little better. Apothecary Geist, 3 and a white for a 2/3 fly. When it enters the battlefield, if you control another spirit, you gain 3 life. There is an amount of spirits in this set, though it's not trivial. If this always gives you 3 life when it comes into play, it's pretty nice, but it doesn't always do that. So I think it's around a C-. It's almost like a build around C+, where if you have a lot of spirits in your deck, it's a good card that's about a C+, but if you're not gaining the life, it's a little mediocre. 2/3 flyer for 4 is not that great. So I think it's a C-, but it can be a build around C+ if you have enough spirits. Blessed Alliance, 1 and a white for an instant. It has Escalate 2, which means that if you pay the Escalate cost, you can choose more. And so if you pay 4 mana, you get all the modes. And target player gains 4 life, untap up to 2 target creatures, and target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature. This was better in Constructed than in Limited. It's a little hard to get all the modes to work, but it's not terrible. The problem is that you want to untap creatures to ambush, and opponent sacrifice an attacking creature. Opponent can often sacrifice the creature was gonna get ambushed anyway, and gaining some life on top of it. It's nice, but it's not that great. I think it's around a C. Borrowed Grace, 2 and a white, and it has Escalate 1 and a white. And so creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn, and creatures you control get +0/+2 until end of turn. So if you're paying 5 mana, you get a slightly better, what's it called, the charge, Inspired Charge. But if you're only costing 3, you get +2/+0, which is sometimes is enough. This is a build around, or like sort of a payoff. If you're having a lot of small tokens and going aggressive, it's fine to play 1 or even 2 of these. But it's not a high priority. I would pick it around a C-. I don't think it's a super good card. But you know when you want an effect like this. And yeah, casting it for 3 mana to give +0/+2 can sometimes save a creature from a removal. That's very clunky, but it's sort of like a bonus. Bound by Moonsilver, 2 and a white for an aura. Enchant creature. Enchant creature can't attack, block, or transform. And you can sacrifice another permanent to attach it to target creature. You can only activate it as a sorcery only once each turn. So it is a arrest that you can also move around if you sacrifice a permanent. And like with Angelic Purge, this is a card that you can move around, and you can enable Delirium by sacrificing a land. It is also nice that you can play this early without feeling that you're wasting it, and then later in the game, if your opponent plays a big bomb, you can just move it around. This is a lot better than a regular arrest just because it has that flexibility to move around later. I think it's about a B, and it's really great. It also stops some cards that gives a payoff when they transform. Bygone Bishop, 2 and a white for a 2/3 fly rare. Should probably mention the rarity. And it has flying, and when you cast a creature spell with mana value 3 or less, investigate. Investigate means that you get a clue that you can sacrifice with 2 mana. This is just great. A 2/3 flyer for 3 is like a Soaring Drake, which is already an okay card, and creatures were a little bit worse back then. So this is already good, and then every time you get a mana value 3 or less, you get an extra card eventually. There's basically no downside to this card. It reminds me a little bit of Welcoming Vampire from one of the Innistrad sets we had recently. It's really good. It's a B, I think. Could even be a B plus if you have a lot of small creatures. Just there's very little down, so you can just play it as a good stats, and then you're getting paid off for doing what you want to be doing. Anyway. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna mention that the card I mentioned earlier, Blessed Alliance, escalate means that you have to pay 2 for every instance. So if you want all 3, you have to pay 6 mana. So that makes the card a little bit worse, but still, I think still the C. So next time we have an escalate turn here is Collective Effort. It's 1 white, and escalate tap an untap creature you control. So if you want all the 3 modes, you need to tap 2 creatures. Destroy target creature power 4 or greater, destroy target enchantment, and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls, which should be you. Really solid. Growing your team as a one-shot is usually worse than Glorious Anthem because it doesn't help the creatures that comes out afterwards. It's a little better in the sense that if your opponent deals with the Glorious Anthem, you still have the bonus. But the fact that you can also destroy something big means that this card is great. I think it's an A-. It grows your entire board and kills your opponent's best creatures. And one of the downsides for destroying with power forward is that this card is flexible. So if you can't do that, you can still grow your entire team. And destroy enchantment comes up too. I mean, if you get all 3 modes on this, you're probably going to win the game. So A-, very good card. Courageous Outrider, 3 and a white for a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a human card and put it into your hand. Rest on the bottom. If you hit, it's a fantastic card because 3/4 for 4 that draws you a creature is great. If you don't hit, it's mediocre. But there are a good amount of humans, and there are some cards that pays you off for having humans. So I think it's like a build around B-, where if you have a lot of humans, it's gonna on average draw you a card some amount of the time. It's never gonna hit every time, but if you're hitting some amount of the time, it's a card I'm happy to have in your deck. And if you don't have that, it's like a D+. 3/4 for 4 is just not good enough. So it's like a build around B-, which is a weird ranking, but here we are. Dauntless Cathar, 2 and a white for a 3/2. Common, and you can pay 1 and a white, exile from your graveyard, and get a 1/1 spirit with flying. Only activated as a sorcerer. Pretty solid card, 3/2 for 3. It's not good, but the ability is sort of a bonus. If you randomly mill it somehow, it's a nice value card. I think it's a C, pretty solid. Almost could be a C+ if you got some synergies with the 1/1 token. Because you're not paying a huge price for this card, but it's a C. Dawn-Gryph, 2 and a white for a 2/2 flyer. And this was around the time in Magic where Windbreak started to be a little less good. So I don't love this card too much. I think it's a D+. Could be a C- if you're a little more aggressive. But the problem with the Windbreak is that it doesn't block very well. So D+ for Dawn-Gryph. And Windbreaks are usually not even good. I mean, we have Soaring Drake in the Dominaria United, and that wasn't even a fantastic card. And that had 1 extra toughness for 3. Declaration in Stone, a rare, 1 and a white, sorcery, exile target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. And that player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. It's 2 mana exile a creature, but your opponent can eventually draw a card. It's a good card, it's not a bomb, and you're very rarely gonna get multiples. You can get some token multiples sometimes, and then your opponent doesn't even get clues, so that's nice. And if you exile a token, your opponent also doesn't get a card. I think it's Declaration in Stone is about a B- C+. It's not a fantastic card, but it is very cheap. Reminds me a lot of Fateful Absence, but it's worse because it's not an instant. So think of it like a Fateful Absence is a little worse. The getting multiples doesn't make up for the fact that you can't blow out someone with a instant speed removal. So I think about a B- for that card. Descend upon the Sinful 4 white for a mythic, sorcery, exile all creatures, it's a sweeper. And Delirium you get a 4/4 angel, if there are 4 or more cards or some cards in your graveyard. So with this card, if you can't get Delirium, it's not that great, 6 mana sweeper. It's not a particularly good card, it's like a D+, C-. But if you can get the bonus, it's just one of the best cards in the set. So you really want to have Delirium. You want to have those Angelic Edicts and maybe even the Bound by Mool Silver. Because if you can get Delirium, this is an A. It just destroys all creatures and you are left with a 4/4 angel that it makes up for all the downsides with sweepers, because you're on the board right after. You got a 2/1 or even more because you got a creature. So make sure that you want to have a way to get Delirium. I think often black-white is a nice color for this. Could also be green-white with Vessel of Nascency. And it's harder to make the work in red-white. But very good card. And a good first pick. Devilform Fox, 1 and white for a free one. I remember 1 toughness creatures being a little bit vulnerable in this set. There were 1/1 spirits, like with Aftermath. There were some cards that punished 1 toughness creatures. There's some escalate cards in black, and Tooth Collector was another card. So this is a D+, it wasn't particularly good. If there was a hyper-aggressive go-wide deck, it could form a function, but even in those decks, it wasn't that good. So D+ for Devilform Fox. Drogskull Shieldmate, 2 and white for 2/3 flash. It's common this time, I think it was uncommon the last time. And when it ends the battlefield, other creatures you control get +0/+1 until end of turn. This was never a particularly good card. It's hard to get that bonus to do much. Sometimes you can save it, but oftentimes with these cards you want to play them on curve and then that ability might not do anything. And if you're using this later, the body doesn't do much. So this is, I think, another D+. I don't really like this card too much. It can have its moments, but if it gave, it would have had to give more than +0/+1 for this to be particularly good. Fate Unbroken. This is a very swingy card. 3 and white for an aura. Ancient creature you control. And when it ends the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. So it's sort of like an Oblivion Ring. And enchant creature gets +2/+2. So when this card works, it's fantastic. You exile your opponent's creatures and your creature is bigger. And when it doesn't work, your opponent 2/1s you. So then it's not that good. But it has a very high ceiling. I remember losing a lot of games to this card. And I think it's a B. And you want to have some ways to protect it if you can. Or the matchup could just be. But this is a card that rewards you for being careful. But sometimes you can plan the game to bait out your opponent's removal and then land it. And then it's great. But it's a B. It's a very powerful card. Faithberry Paladin. 4 and white for a 3/4 lifelinker. Yeah, it's about a C-. It's a card you can put in your deck, and it can be pretty good against some of the more aggressive decks because it's the card that you hate to attack into. But it could also be a little bit awkward. Your opponent may go around it, put something on it, or if your opponent is a controlling deck, they don't really care about this card. So it's not a hugely good card. It's like C-. Fiendbinder. This was a controversial card if I remember correctly. 3 and white for a 3/2, and when it attacks, you tap target creature defending play controls. So this is much worse than the Territorial Hammer Skulls because you have to pay 1 mana more and the power and toughness are switched. And it's almost worse because your opponent has an easier time blocking this. This card I remember not being great. It had some moments where you were super aggressive, And if you could back it up with some removal or pump, it could almost feel like a Fiend Hunter style effect. But there were also times where it didn't do anything. You got one improved attack and your opponent just traded for this. I think it's around a C. If you're very aggressive, it could be a C+, but I wouldn't just put it in any deck. I want to be very aggressive with it. Griff's Boon, a card that probably is better than it looks. 1 white mana for an aura. Enchant creature gets +0/+0 and has flying. And you can pay 3 and a white to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to the target creature. Only as a sorcery. What happens to this card is you play it early on something, almost anything. You start hitting with it. And then when your opponent kills that card, you can just put this into play again and you have another evasive threat. There are some decks that just can't beat this card. If your opponent is a little slower, doesn't have too much reach, I mean the keyword reach, this card could just end the game. It could be awkward if your opponent is aggressive. But if I'm aggressive, I think this card is really good. I think it's about a B- if I'm aggressive. So it's like a build around B-, where if I'm aggressive, have a lot of creatures, I want this card. Because it's worth it. You can just play it early on anything and you don't really care if your opponent kills it later. Because you can just then put it on something even bigger. So it's a very threatening card. And if I'm aggressive, it's about a B-. Guardian of Pilgrims, 1 and a white for a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature get +1/+1 until end of turn. It's pretty mediocre. It can help you get through the turn it comes into play, but I'm only playing this if I'm aggressive, or if I desperately need a 2-drop. It's a C in an aggressive deck. Hope Against Hope, 2 and a white for an aura. Enchanted creature get +1/+1 for each creature you control. As long as it's a human, it has first strike. I never liked this card too much. It's an aura that needs to have other creatures. I mean, it gives itself, counts itself. So if I'm a heavy human deck, it's probably okay to play it. But I never liked the risk. Like with Faith Unbroken, which I discussed earlier, the risk was worth it because the payoff was so huge. Here, your opponent can maybe even take a couple of hits and it's not a big deal. So I think it's a D, not great. Humble the Brute, 4 and a white, destroy target creature power 4 or greater, investigate. So this is much worse than the rare, of course, but I still don't like this card. It's super clunky. And yeah, you could eventually be up a card, but that's 7 mana. Sure, it's an installment plan, but I think this is just a sideboard card. I think it's a D. And if your opponent has some super problematic rare that you need to deal with, you can bring it in. So it's like a sideboard C+, where it could be pretty good, but I think it's around a D. It's not a great card. Ironclad Slayer, it's an uncommon. I think this used to be a common, so they upshifted this, which tell you a little bit. So it's 2 and a white for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target aura or equipment card from your graveyard to your hand. So that often is a black, white, gold card, because there are some black auras that gives minus. There's one card that gives +3, -3. So this is almost like a black, white, gold card, and it's very good if you are in that deck. Then it's like a B-, because it's a 3/2 for 3 that draws you a relevant card. But you need auras that go to the graveyard somehow, and then it's great. And if it's not, it's like a D+, 3/2 for 3. But if you have a critical mass of auras, it's pretty good. Lunarch Mantle, another interesting aura. 1 and a white for an enchant creature. And enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has 1. Sacrifice a permanent. This creature gains flying until end of turn. So that's a thing that you can't do too many times, but hopefully when you play this early you can get some hits in. And then when your opponent is ready to block it, you can sacrifice a land and give it flying for a couple of turns. So it's a very powerful card. It also helps with Delirium. You can sacrifice some permanents to, and if this goes to the graveyard, you are 2 types there. So I remember liking this card more than Hope Against Hope, because it also gave flying, which is huge eventually. So I think it's a C+ in the right deck. I mean, a lot of these white cards want you to be aggressive, but in the right deck it could be pretty good. Nearheath Chaplain, wow, this card is great. 3 and a white for a 3/1 lifelink. You're anyway, you can pay 2 and a white exile from your graveyard and you get 2 1/1 spirits, not just 1 but 2. So it's great because a 3/1 lifelink is hard to ignore. Sure, your opponent can have like a 1 toughness creature, but if they don't, they're gonna trade a real card for it, and then you get 2 1/1 flyers. So this is a B. It's just very good because you're gonna get a life swing, and then you're gonna get 3 2 1/1 flyers, and it's also good defensively. If you play this card, your opponent never want to attack into it. And also the same thing applies about randomly milling this, and you can get some value. So it's a B. It's better than it looks. Next one, Ordric Lunar Marshal. It's a 3/white for a 3/3. Rare. And at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if creature you control has first strike. And the same is true for all the keywords. Flying, Death Touch, Double Strike, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Skulk, Trample, and Vigilance. This is a build run in some sense, but it's hard to get a white deck without some of the keywords. And if you get Flying, your entire team gains Flying. So this is a very powerful card. It's a little bit of a build run because you want to prioritize keywords. If you got this low, if I have Ordric, I might play that 2/2 flyer for free because that's just such a good card. Same thing if you got a random lifelinker, then you can get a huge life swing. So Ordric is a B. It's a fantastic card in almost every white deck. It's hard to make a white deck where it's not good. I remember happening like one time where I have Ordric and I have basically no keywords, and then it wasn't great, but it's a B for the most part. Puncturing Light, 1 and a white, instant, short targets attacking or blocking creature with power 3 or less. Pretty mediocre. This card is usually bad. If you're aggressive, your opponent gets to block first, and if you're defensive, you have to keep mana open and stuff like that. So it's a C minus. It's not a terrible card, but if you're aggressive, it's like a D plus, even worse. Reaper of Flight Moonsilver, 3/white for a 3/3 flyer. And in Delirium, you can sacrifice another creature, give it +2/+1. Activate only if there are 4 more card types among cards in your grave. This is not a super great card because even when you get Delirium, it's not necessarily that great. Yes, it's very threatening, but before you get Delirium, it's just too weak. 3/3 flyer for 5 is not good. And you want your Delirium payoffs to be a little less depending on the board state. So I think this is a C minus. Could even be like a D plus. But if you're having a reasonable easy time to get Delirium, it's not terrible. But this is usually a card that doesn't fit in white deck. Unlike the Mythic Sweeper, which just the payoff is just too high. So it's like a C minus D plus. Not a great card. Next card is great. It's Selfless Spirit. You may know this from Constructed. 1 and a white for a 2/1 flyer. And you can sacrifice it to give creatures you control indestructible until end of turn. So 2/1 flyer for 2 is already a pretty good card. But then this card also protects your creatures from removal. So your opponent's gonna have to deal with this card. This is a B minus. I think it's not as bomb, but it's really solid. You can play it early and then late game it still does things. It's a little vulnerable to 1 toughness things, but it's hard to go wrong with this card. B minus. It's not as good as in Limited as in Constructed though. Sigarda's Aid. Constructed. Speaking of constructed cards. White mana for enchantment. You may cast or an equipment spell as total health flash. And whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to a creature you control. This is an F. It's not worth it what you're getting here. You're getting some small upsides for auras. Leave this for Constructed. It's unplayable. F. Sigardian Priest, 1 and a white for a 1/2, and you can pay 1 tap target non-human creature. This card is very good. It's a little awkward you can't tap humans, but that doesn't come up. You can often find a way to tap, and it's a human itself, so it pays you off for the synergies as well. This is a good card. I will give it a B minus. It usually just plays out so good. You can tap something on your opponent's end step, and then your turn tap something else, and your opponent has out 2 blockers. Or you can use it defensively on your opponent's best creature. It scales with the game. Earlier it may not do much, but late in the game you're going to tap the best thing every turn. And your opponent's going to feel like they have to have a removal spell. So B minus for Sigardian Priest, very good card. Could be the best white common, honestly. Spectral Shepherd, 2 and a white for a 2/2 flyer. And you can be 1 and a blue, return target spirit you control to its owner's hand. So if you're not blue-white, it's going to give the same grade as the Griff. So it's going to be like a C minus, D plus. But if you are blue-white, there are some nice things you can do. You can protect spirits from removal. This bounces itself, so you can also block and your opponent's big card without trample and then bounce. And there's also some comes into play cards like the 3 and a white 2/3 and can gain some more life late game. This is an ability that you usually don't use very early, but it can come in handy late game. So you play your 3-drop evasive early, and then very late in the game your opponent realizes, that card is really annoying. So in blue-white's dedicated spirit deck, it's about I think it's like a C+. It's still not an awesome card, but it's pretty solid in blue-white. Otherwise it's like a D+, C-. Steadfast Qatar 1 and white for 2/1, and whenever it attacks it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. So that doesn't work on blocks, and it's still vulnerable to 1 toughness thing. So this is not a great card either, it's like D+, pretty mediocre. But yeah, sure, if you want to go the all-in aggro human go wide deck, it can perform at about a C-. Strength of Arms, white mana for an instant. Target creature get +2/+2 until end of turn. If you control an equipment, you get a human soldier. So if you don't have any equipments in your deck, it's about a C-, D+, pretty mediocre. But if you have some equipment, getting the 1/1 is pretty huge, because also a human soldier. So if you are the aggressive white deck with some equipments, it's about a C+. Then you want it, because you want a trick like this, and getting a 1/1 is pretty huge, because then you can put the equipment on the 1/1, and that's pretty nice synergy. Wow, this card is very exciting. Subjugator Angel, 4 for a 4/3 flyer. And when it enters the battlefield, you tap all creatures your opponents control. That's very powerful. So it's a 6-drop that you want to have in a little more of an aggressive deck. But that effect is very powerful. You are having to pay a price to play this as a 6 mana. So this might be controversial, but I think I like this card in almost all my white decks. If you say, if I am aggressive, I want that effect like this. And if I'm mid-range, I may want this too, just to randomly win the game. And it's 4/3 flyer, 4/6. It can be pretty solid. So I think it's a card that's like a C+. It's not a fantastic card, but it does a lot of work. And it's very threatening. It is a card you have to think about in the format being there. So C+ for Subjugator Angel. It is weak against aggressive deck, because against aggressive deck the ability may not do much. Still, even when you play against aggressive deck, this can just randomly win a race that you thought you had no business winning. So C+ for Subjugator Angel, but it's gonna perform like an A-level card sometimes. Thalia Heretic Qatar, a rare. 2 and a white for a 3/2 first strike, so already exciting. And creates a non-basic lands your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. So forget about no-basic lands, but having your opponent's creature enter the battlefield tapped is just so good when you're aggressive, because it prevents them from blocking the turn and comes into play. It hosts all haste creatures, so if your opponent is red, there are some haste creatures. And a 3/2 first strike for 3 is just fantastic. So I think Thalia is a B+. It doesn't get to the A level, because if you draw this later in the game, it's still a fine card, but it doesn't do that much. But on turn 3, your opponent's probably going to need a removal spell, because this attacks almost with impunity. The fact that your opponent's creature comes into play tapped means it's harder for your opponent to double block this too, because you need to have the creatures into play at the same time. And then of course if you have a trick, it's 6. So it's a B+, fantastic card. Thalia's Lancers, 3 white fight for 4 for first strike. And when it ends the battlefield, you may search your library for a legendary card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle. And I think at this time Planeswalkers are legendary, which weren't the last time. So if you don't have any legends, it's about a C+. A 4/4 first strike for 5 is solid. It's not a bomb, but it's hard to attack into. It attacks pretty well, but it does get blanked by like a 4/5. There are some big creatures, so it's about a C+, B- if you don't have. But if you got any legendary card, this goes up to a B+, A-, somewhere around that, because then you're getting a 4/4 first that just draws you a fantastic card. Never mind, I'm giving this an A- if you got any legendary. Unless the legendary is just horrible, but if you got Thalia, this is an A-. So it's about a C+, A-. And if you got Thalia's Lancers, I would of course pick Legends very highly, because that's just such a nice combo. Vraben Inspector. This was probably a sleeper when it came out. It's probably not a sleeper now. 1 white mana for 1/2. When it ends the battlefield, you investigate. So eventually you're gonna be up a card, because the 1/2 is just a good body. It blocks a reasonable amount of time. We've already seen some 1 toughness creatures. So this is a very solid card. I think this is about a B-. It's about C+, B-. It's very good though. And when you're having an opening hand with Fraben Inspector, you're feeling this warm, fuzzy feeling that you're gonna get to play your game. Because the nice thing, this isn't just a 2 and a white 1 to draw a card. This is white mana for a 1-2 that when you're running out of things to do, you can crack the clue. There's also some synergies with clues. So really good card. And I think it was a sleeper when it came out, but it's a B-, I think. Very good card. I'm a little surprised they didn't upshift Fraben Inspector to uncommon, honestly. Alright, next card is Topple, guys. White mana for a 1-1 flyer. When it ends the battle, you tap target creature an opponent controls. So this is like the card from Kamigawa, the Network Disruptor. But it also has Delirium. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you tap target creature that play controls. This is a nice card for an aggressive deck, because you can play it early and you don't have Delirium. It's not going to happen for a while. But it's also one drop that if you draw it on turn 5, you can tap a blocker and get infinite damage. But then when Delirium turns on, it turns into an absolute beast. So if I'm aggressive, I think it's about a C+. If I am aggressive, I have a reasonable, easy time to get in Delirium. I got Angelic Purge, the Bound by Moon Silver. Maybe the other color I'm playing can give me Delirium somewhat easily. Then it's about a B-. But it's a pretty solid card. Okay, we have some double face cards as well. Let's some of these are crazy bombs, like Archangel Avacyn. 3 white for a 4/4. This has so much text, so I'm gonna be exhausted when I'm done with this. Flash Flying Vigilance, so already it's like an B+, A- level card. But when it ends the battlefield, creatures you control get indestructible until the end of turn. So that means that it itself gets indestructible. Yeah, sure, your opponent have an instant speed removal. It's still gonna give all your other creatures indestructible. But then it protects all your creatures from... So you can get an insane blowout in combat. And whenever a non-angel creature you control dies, you transform it into a 6/5 flyer that deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. So this is still in play. Your opponent takes 3. It may sweep the board, but it's usually good for you. This is an A+. It's one of the better cards I've ever made for Constructed. It almost made my top 8 list, but this is just one of the best cards ever printed. Just play with it and you will realize how good it is. It's going to eat some creature when it comes into play. Then it's a huge Flash Flying Vigilance. And if some of your other creatures die, it sweeps the board. So A+. Bruna, the Fading Light. 5 white for a 5/7 Flying Vigilance. So another Flying Vigilance. And when you cast this spell, you return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then it melds with Gisela the Broken Blade, which is another card I'm going to get to. I shouldn't waste too many words on that. It's a card that becomes a huge card and prevents your opponent from casting spells. But if you got an amount of angel or humans, this is solid. I think it's like a B, where it's expensive, but if you're getting on the board when you cast this card, it's pretty great. And so it's like a build around B, where the problem with this card is that white are usually aggressive, so 7 drops may not be good, especially those who have humans. So it's sort of like a B, where it can be pretty good in a little more controlling white deck with angels and humans. So build around B for that card. But if I'm an aggressive low to the ground white deck, I don't want that. Whereas I'm still going to play Avacyn, of course, in that deck. Gisela the Broken Blade. So this is the card that melts with the earlier card. 2 white for a 4/3 flying first strike lifelink. So already a fantastic card. But then it doesn't have any more text except the melt. So these two cards, if you have both, they meld into a 9/10 flying first strike vigilance lifelink. Which may not even be a good thing for you, because your opponent has a rumor so that deals with both creatures. But anyway, this is an A. It doesn't really get to A+, because it's a little vulnerable to removal, whereas the other Avacyn wasn't. But it's still a fantastic card. Impossible to raise. First strike, you can attack through almost everything. So, insane card, A. Lone Rider, 1 and a white for a 1/1 first strike lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, transform it into a 4/4 first strike trample lifelink. So if you can't transform it, it's not good. It's like an F. I mean, I wouldn't play a first strike 1/1 first strike lifelinker. But if you got some ways to transform it, it's fine. We have the 3/4 lifelinker. We have the Apothecary Geist. Unfortunately, this card itself, it's not a spirit, so it's not going to help you gain 3 life. So it's like a build around B-, where if you can transform this, it's fantastic. I mean, 1 and a white for 4 for first, for example, lifelink. Even if you have to wait 1 or 2 turns, it's great. Otherwise, it's an F. But I want like 4 or 5 ways to gain 3 life before I want to play it. So we have Town Gossipmonger, white mana for a 1/1. And you can tap an untapped creature you control to transform it into a 2/3 that attacks each combat, and you can pump it for 2 mana. If you're aggressive, it's like a C+. It's a card that eventually becomes pretty big. If you're slower or mid-range, you don't want those cards at all. So it's like a C+ in an aggressive deck, because it does attack pretty good. And the fact that it has to attack every turn is somewhat mitigated by the fact that it has a pump ability, you know. So that was one. Alright, blue. Advanced Stitchwing. 3 blue for a 3/4 flyer. You discard 2 cards, return it from your graveyard to battlefield tapped. Pretty solid card. It's 3/4 flyer for 5. It's okay, especially back in these days where that was still a fine card. But then late game you get it back, and you can discard cards to help with Delirium. You can discard lands you don't have any use for, so I think it's a pretty solid card. It's about a C+. If you're super enabling it in graveyard centric, it could be like a B-, but it's about a C+, pretty solid card. Compelling Deterrence, 1 and a blue for a instant. You return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, then that player discards a card if you control a zombie. If you're a zombie deck, it's a C+. It's really good. Otherwise, it's just like a Disperse, which is about a D+, I think. I don't think Disperse is particularly good. And but if you're a zombie deck with like 7 or 8 zombies, it goes into a really good card, because then that's a great card. So it's like almost like a builder. Confirm Suspicions. 3 blue for a rare instant. You counter a target spell, investigate 3 times. This is a powerful but very slow card. So this is not a card that's particularly good against an aggressive deck, of course. But it can be really great against another controlling deck, because you almost want counterspells anyway. And eventually will be up 3 cards. It's going to take a lot of time, of course. So it's almost like a sideboard card, I want to say. I mean, I guess I could see it if you got some way to make spells cheaper, or if you have a lot of defensive speeds, okay to have this as sort of like a finisher. It's almost like a finisher. But I want to say it's like a sideboard B+, where it's great against some matchups. Otherwise, it's around I think it's like a D+. It's not a particularly good card. It's just too slow. So slow card. 5 mana counterspell, of course, it's joke. It's the most telegraphed card ever. Of course, it's a rare, so it may not be so obvious, but it's not a great rare, honestly. Convolute, another kind of weak counterspell. 2 and a blue for an instant. You cannot spell unless its controller pays 4. So it's a 3 mana counterspell, which means that it has a lot of the downsides as cancel, but it also can be dead late game where your opponent has the mana to pay. This is a really mediocre card. I think it's like a D+. It's not a great card. It has too many downsides for an already not great effect. I mean, counterspells are not good in limited usually. This next counter is a little better. 2 and a blue instant. You counter a creature spell and it gets exiled. So unlike Convolute, this doesn't get dead later in the game. It has a downside of not being able to counter like the white mythic, for example, or like a removal spell. Exiling a card matters. There are some cards with like Afterlife and the Advanced Stitchwing. Still not great. It's like a C-. It's a little better than Convolute though. Drag Under is a nice one. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Return a creature to its owner's hand. You draw a card. So you remember Tolarian Geyser. This from the Monoria United. This is this card, but it's doesn't have kicker. But the strength of Tolarian Geyser was usually not the kicker. It was more like a bonus. So this is about the same card. I think it's about a C+. It doesn't really have the same cinders. They're all on Tolarian Terrors, but it can get to be a B- if you're a blue-red spells deck, because then you want this effect really bad. But in a generic blue deck, it's good. It's a C+ or B- if you're a spells. Drowned Yard Explorers. 3 and a blue for a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, you investigate. So you are eventually up a card, but that's 6 mana in installment plans. If you are like some clue deck is around a C-. It's not a great card, but it is eventually a 2 for 1. You can do worse than putting this card in deck. So I think it's like a C-. Drunau Corpse Trawler, 3 and a blue for a 1/1. When it ends battlefield, you get a 2/2 black zombie. You can pay 2 and a black to give a zombie death touch. So it could be this card or the token you get, or any other zombies. This is pretty solid in zombies. If you get 2 bodies and you have some additional upside, it can be pretty good if you're trying to attack through your opponent trying to set up ground defense and you just have this card. You remember the Necromancer and Rot Priest from the last set. So in a zombie deck, it's about a C+. Pretty solid card. If you're not a zombie deck, let's say you don't even have black mana, it's about a C-. But it's a C+ in a zombie deck. Could even get to B- in a super dedicated with some tribal payoffs, because you are getting 2 bodies, although they are sort of understated. Epiphany at the Drown Yard. X and a blue instant rare. Reveal the top X+1 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand, not into your graveyard. So it's like a Fact or Fiction, except your opponent gets the choice. It's pretty slow. You want to cast this for about X is equal to 5, because you're getting 3 cards. You may not get the best cards, but you're gonna get some extra material. The problem, of course, is that if you reveal a bomb with this card, you're not gonna get it, because your opponent's gonna put that card into your graveyard. It gets a little better if you get graveyard synergies, but this is kind of a slow card. It's almost like a sideboard B, where in a matchup that's grindy, it's really good, and especially if you get graveyard synergies. But in a regular deck, it's about a C+. You are up a reasonable amount of cards, but it's pretty slow. It's a little better than the rare card spell though. So C+. Erdwall Illuminator. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 flyer, and you investigate for the first time, you get investigate an additional time. This card is pretty solid because a 1/3 flyer for 2 is a fine card, and then getting extra investigate on the bonus is nice. So you're getting the fact that you have to spend a card for a 1/3 flyer, you get to make up for by investigating extra. So in a dedicated investigate deck, this is about a B-. You're just getting a lot of value. The only problem with this card is you may not have time to spend with all the clues. So if you can have some other payoffs, it's nice. But if you're not have a lot of investigates, it's about a C. C- even. But it's a B- if you are a heavy investigate deck, I think. Essence Flux. 1 blue mana for an instant. You exile target creature you control and return to the battlefield, and it's a spirit, put a counter on it. Not a great card, it can save your creature from a removal. It can become a little bit bigger if it's a spirit. So in a spirit deck, it's about a C-. In another decks, it's like a D+. This is usually, you have to work a little bit hard for this card, and there are some games where it's not going to do anything. So, not great. Exultant Cultist, 2 and a blue for a 2/2. When it dies, you draw a card. So this is a combo with Emerge. Emerge is an ability that you sacrifice creatures to get to play cheaper cards. So if you use this to cast Emerge, you're not down a card, and if the card with Emerge has an ability that gives you back a card, it can even be up a card. It's pretty good. It's not great, but if you're not an Emerge deck, it's about a C. It's not a terrible card. If you're a Emerge deck, you can creep up to a C+. But it is if you sacrifice this to Emerge, you're down a reasonable amount of tempo. Yes, you're getting the card back, but you didn't get any material. So there are another card that's going to come later in green that's going to be better. But it's about a C. It's a fine card. Wow, this next one is interesting. It's Fleeting Memories. 2 and a blue for enchantment, and when it ends back, you investigate. So eventually you're going to get the card back. It's going to be very slow though. But whenever you sacrifice a clue, target player mills 3 cards. So you're not going to have to do that too many times before your opponent is dead. Of course, sacrificing a clue is very slow. So if you're playing as an aggressive deck, this is way too slow. But you could build around this, like say you have the Illuminator. And that could be a super good engine in a grindy matchup, controlling matchup. So it's almost like a sideboard card where, or a builder. So it can be a sideboard B where it can be backbreaking against another controlling deck. You're just gonna win the game with milling. Or you can build your deck around this and be some sort of mill deck. But I don't think I would main deck this card if I didn't were all in on it. But it's hard to make a mill deck work limited, as you know. It's a pretty sweet card though, and in the right matchup it can be a game winner. Fogwalker, 1 and a blue common with Skulk, which means that it can't be blocked with creatures with greater power. So it's a weird ability. So if your opponent's got a 1/1, you can block it, or 1 with Death Touch, or their own Fogwalker. Then of course it has an ability, when it enters battlefield, target creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during controller's next untap step. So it doesn't tap it, but if it was already tapped, it gets tapped down for an additional turn. This is not a great card. I think it's about a C-. It has a little bit of conflicting, because making sure something doesn't untap is not good when you're attacking, because the creature has to already be tapped. And the Skulk is a little bit of an aggressive ability. So this is sort of like a card that doesn't really... I don't know what deck wants this, but it's not a terrible card. And it can be good as an early blocker that late in the game you can maybe ship in. But it's not a fantastic card, it's about C-. Forgotten Creation, a rare. 3 and a blue for a free with Skulk. So Skulk gets... It's a weird ability because it gets worse the bigger the creature is, in the sense that it's easier to block. So this can get blocked by a 3/3, a 2/2, 2/4 or a 1/4. But it can't be blocked by bigger. But if it's unblocked, it's more powerful because it deals more damage. So Skulk is a really weird mechanic. But anyway, it also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand if you do draw that many cards. That's more an ability that's a bonus. It's nice when you got a crappy hand. You can cash it in for a new hand. But it also helps with Delirium, and if you have got Graveyard Synergy. So the card is fine. It's not a bad card. I think it's a B-. It's a 3/3 Skulk is not a super great card. It can be pretty annoying sometimes. But the fact that you can, anytime you want, cash in your entire hand for a new, that's pretty good. It's not, you can't shoot, you have to take your entire hand though, so if you've got some good cards, you should probably just play them first and then use the ability. You can also stockpile lands if you don't need them. So the ability is really strong. It's more that the abilities are like a bonus. It's something you can do when the situation calls for it, you know. Geist of the Archives, 2 and a blue for 0/4 Defender. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Pretty solid card in a controlling deck. You get to have a good blocker that also fixes your deck every turn. It's a C+, I think. It's if you're controlling, it's a C+. If you're trying to be aggressive, it's not great. But it can almost feels like card advantage, because you blank one of your opponent's attackers and you're getting card selection every turn. So it feels like it kills your opponent's creature and does something for you. So it's solid C+. Geralf's Masterpiece. It used to be a mythic, now it's a rare. 3 blue for a 7/7 flying. Gets -1/-1 for each card in your hand. So if you got no cards in hand, it's a 7/7 flyer. And you can discard pay 3 and discard 3 cards, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Which means it's also going to become pretty huge. That last ability is more like a bonus. It's hard to get 3 cards in your hand and get it back. Then it's tapped, can't block. But it's a bonus. I like this card. So if you're curving out, it's going to be pretty big. It's also a card that you can play, and it may not be super big first time, but then as you slowly play out your hand, it becomes huge, and of course eventually it's going to be a 7/7. I think it's an A-. It's a fantastic card. It's also a card that you can play it, your opponent kills it, then eventually you stockpile like 2 lands and a card you don't need, get it back, it's a 7/7. So it's an A- fantastic card. It gets a little worse if you got a lot of card draw in your deck though. So maybe you shouldn't play like Epiphany and drown your and this card in the same deck. It's fine though, I mean, you can put it in your graveyard, I guess. Imprisoned in the Moon, 2 and a blue for enchantment aura. Enchants creature, land or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap, add colorless, and loses all other card types and abilities. Pretty mediocre removal. It's like the minimus containment. In some sense it's worse because your opponent can use this for mana every turn. Doesn't fix the colors, but I think this is a D-, really bad card. But you can sideboard it in if your opponent got a super problematic permanent. Like for example, it's pretty good against the Mythic that we just talked about. Because it takes it out of play without putting it in the graveyard. So it's more like a sideboard C, but it's a D-, not a good card. Oh man, the next one is great though. Ingenious Scarp, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 with Prowess. You can play blue mana to give it +1/-1, but it works pretty nice with Prowess. This is a great card. I think it's a B-, especially in a blue-red deck with a lot of spells. It's just, even if it didn't have the loss ability, it would still be a decent card, but the fact that you can pump it, threaten to pump, makes it so hard to block. And yeah, it's a great card, probably the best blue common, B-. Invasive Surgery, blue mana for an instant. You can draw a sorcery spell and then Delirium you could get to take away all the copies from all the graveyard, hand and library. Not a good card, I think it's an F. Maybe if you see something like the White Mythic, you can bring it in, especially if your opponent also got Angelic Purge. So it's like a sideboard D, where it's really not a good sideboard card either. But it's most of the time an F, and the art is disgusting. Alright, the next card is not an F. Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, 3 blue, 5 loyalty Planeswalker, +1, scry 1, draw a card, -2, return a creature to its owner's hand, and -8 you get an emblem when your opponent calls a first spell, you counter that spell. Great card, it's like a stock Planeswalker, it does the plus you draw a card, minus you deal with a creature, and then it has an emblem that wins the game. This emblem is actually funny that it may not even end the game, because at the time you get the emblem off, your opponent's gonna be in top deck more than not have too many cards. So, I mean, of course it's nice, stops any top decks, but yeah, this is a good card. It's like an A-. I just think it's a little boring as a Planeswalker, you know. And the -2 is it's not as good as killing a creature. So A- for Jace is good, but it's really good, but it's not like some the Eternal Wanderer. Jace Scrutiny, 1 blue instant. Target creature give -4/-0 until end of turn, and you investigate. And if you can set this up, you can 2-for-1 because you kill a creature in combat. Let's say your 2/2 blocks your opponent's 2/2, and then eventually you get to draw a card. I remember this card being pretty solid. You can often set it up in a nice way. It reminds me of Arcane, that card from Strixhaven, Arcane Subtraction or whatever it was, -4/-0 and learn. And this is a little similar. You give something -4/-0 and then you get a little bonus. I think it's a C. It's a solid card. I wouldn't play too many of them, but it's fine to play some of them. Laboratory Brute, 3 and a blue for a 3/3, but it's better for you mill 4 cards. Not great. If you got Graveyard Synergies, you can put it in your deck. So it's like a build around C, where it's a passable card if you got some graveyard stuff, like some of the Stitchwings. But 4 mana 3/3 wasn't even back in 2016, not a especially good deal. It is a zombie though, so it's like a filler, it's like a C- D+. It's not a terrible card for a zombie deck either. It doesn't do anything special though. Manic Scribe, this is another piece of the mill deck, I guess. 1 and a blue for an 0/3. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent mills 3 cards. And then it has Delirium. If you have Delirium, your opponent mills 3 cards every turn. So, yeah, you can... This is sort of... It's almost worse. It's like the enchantment, except you're having to play an 0/3 for 2 and you're not getting the card back. You can combine those 2 cards and make a mill deck, maybe. I was never really a believer of that deck, but it's like a build around B-, where that deck could be good. It could also be a sideboard card. It could be pretty annoying. If you're a Delirium deck, you can side this in against another slow deck. So it's like a sideboard B- on both ends. But I wouldn't just play this. It also helps your opponent with getting Delirium. Almost every color has Delirium. Mausoleum Wanderer, 1 blue mana for a 1/1 flyer. And whenever you play again another spirit into your side, get +1/+1, you can sack it to counter an instant resource and control the space X. That last is more annoying than good. Your opponent can play around it. It's gonna stop your opponent from doing something sometime. This is not as good as it is in Constructed. If you're heavy spirits, it can get to around a C. I think it's like a D+, though it's not a great card. It's usually just gonna be a 1/1 fly for 1, and that's not good enough. So D+ for Muslim Wanderer. Mind Installation and Mythic 5 blue for enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a first spell, each turn that plays exiles the top card of the library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So if it's a land, you get nothing. But yeah, this is not a great card. It's another one of those sideboard cards where if your opponent is super slow, you can play this. But even then, sometimes you're gonna whiff. This, I think, has more dreams than it is good. I'm just gonna give this an F. I just think it's too slow. And about a third of the time, every turn your opponent casts a spell, you're gonna get nothing, which is a land. And sometimes you're gonna get something that doesn't matter. And you have to spend 7 mana and it doesn't win you the game. So I think it's an F. Mebelgost Herald, 2 and a blue for a 2/1 flash flying. When it enters the battlefield or another spirit, tap target creature an opponent controls. Pretty nice card. It's not even that bad if you don't have any other spirits. An evasive threat that taps something makes up for the fact that it's very fragile and doesn't block well. So I think it's a C in a normal deck, but in a spirit deck it's about a B- because then you can, if you can get multiple triggers from this, it's gonna end up being very good. So B- in a spirit deck, C in a normal deck, I think. There's nothing special in a normal deck. Ongoing is the investigation is the sweet build around. 1 and a blue, enchantment, uncommon. When one or more creatures you control the combat damage to play investigate. So can play pretty nice with some of the Skulk cards, maybe. But you can play 1 in a green, extra create card from your graveyard, investigate, you gain 2 life. This is basically a gold card, because blue-green are more a clue-based deck. But it's a very powerful build around, and you don't even need to get through with your creatures too many times. It's oftentimes just to do 1 or 2. And it also helps that if your opponent don't want to let you investigate, they have to trade, and then you can get investigate anyway. So in a blue-green deck, this is about a B-, very powerful. And the 2 life helps you, because when you're spending time drawing extra cards, getting a bit of life also helps. And there are self-mill, of course. So B-, build around B- for ongoing investigations. If you got payoffs for cracking clues, gets even better. Pieces of the puzzle, 2 and a blue, sorcery. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library, put up to 2 instant and sorcery cards from among them into your hand and rest into your graveyard. Not a good card. If your deck is like 12 to 13 spells, maybe you can play it. But I think it's mostly an F. It can be like a build around C+, though, if you're like an insane amount of spells. Now the next one I like, though, pour over the pages. 3 blue, draw 3 cards, untap up to 2 lands, then discard a card. So you are up a card eventually with some selections. You're getting 2 of the mana back. So this is a pretty nice way to reload, and untapping 2 lands also makes it so you can play something else in the same turn, like a cheap removal spell or a cheap creature. So the fact that it's clunky, it makes up for it a little bit by untapping some lands. So I think it's a solid card. It's a C+, I think. It is slow though, but it's nice. Rattle Chains, 1 and blue for 2/1 flash flying. When it enters the battlefield, target spirit gains hexproof until end of turn, which I guess could be itself, but I don't know how that matters. And you may cast spirit spells as though they had flash. Yeah, this is a 2/1 flyer for 2 with some extra upside. If you are not a spirit deck, it's about a C. If you are a spirit deck, it goes up to C+. It's still not a bomb. It's not as good as in Constructed, but it's a little better than the Muslim Wanderer because the extra power makes a huge difference in Limited. So C++ for Rattle Chains. Rise from the Tides, an interesting build around. 5 and a blue, sorcery. Create a tapped, and that's a word that makes this card much worse. 2 black zombie for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Really good build around, and a card that may make me reconsider Piece of the Puzzle, maybe. But if you can get 5 or 6 zombies from this, you can win the game later on. The fact that they come into play tap is awkward, because a deck that wants to filter a deck full of instant or sorcery usually have to sacrifice board presence for that. But it's a build around B, where this could be your entire deck's game plan. This is no spider spawning, though. This is so much worse than spider spawning because you can't block and the creatures don't have reach. But it's a payoff if you're like the blue-red with like 12-13 spells. It could be a B. It could also be an F if you don't have the support. If you have like 5-6 instant resources, don't play it. Spontaneous Mutation. 1 blue mana for Aura, flash enchant creature, and it gets -X/-O, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. Pretty good card. It's not great early, but late game you can combine this with another card. It's pretty nice. It also is an enchant, so if the creature dies, you get an enchantment in your graveyard, which could be good for Delirium. I think it's a C. It's a solid card. It's a better if you are defensive, because as with the white trick, your opponent gets to block first. But it's not bad. Storm Rider Spirit, 4 and blue for a 3/3 flash flyer. Nothing special. It's okay to play this card. It's like a D+, but it's nothing special. It's just, it blocks so bad, and it's not gonna ambush too many times. So D+ for Storm Rider Spirit. Summary Dismissal is a rare 2 blue. Exile all other spells and counter all abilities. So this is like a card that's good against Emerge. Otherwise it's a 4 mana counter spell, which I think is like a D-. Very bad. If your opponent is Emerge, you can counter the Emerge spell and the trigger from, because the Emerge card has triggers. So I don't even know how many Emerge cards there are in this set, but this is a D-, not a good card. Take Inventory is an interesting one. 1 on a blue sorcery, you draw a card and you draw cards equal to the number of cards and then take inventory in your graveyard. So it's obviously not a good card if you have only 1. It's not that good if you have 2. But if you got 3 or 4, it can be pretty good in a blue-red spells deck. So it's like a build around C+. In a dedicated blue-red spells deck, it triggers all your instant and sorcery payoffs. And then it digs you toward other stuff. And eventually you're going to draw more. It works if you discard it or mill it and you draw the second copy. So it's like a build around C+. Or it can be an F if you only got 1, or if your deck doesn't want this type of effect. Tattered Haunt. They're 1 and a blue for 2/1 flying. It is a spirit, and can block only creatures with flying. Don't like this card too much, but in a spirit deck I guess you could play it. So it's like a, or if you're somehow aggressive. But some of the blue cards we saw here weren't necessarily that aggressive. So it's like a C in a spirit deck and a D+ in a normal deck. Dwarf Infiltrate is a rare 1 and a blue for a 1/1 with Skulk, so again, can only be blocked with 1 powered creatures. And whenever it is common time to play, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So already it's looking like a pretty good card. You're gonna get loot sometime. It is not unblockable though, so your opponent's gonna have blockers sometimes. And whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 if you do get a 3/2 Eldrazi Horror. So that means you're actually up a card. If you consider the 3/2 a card, you're up a card at that point. And you don't have to sacrifice board presence either, because you're getting a 3/2. And you may even discard something that you can have some graveyards in, maybe has Aftermath, or if some of the Stitch Wings. And you don't have to discard a card, you can just loot. So this is a card that you want to have a little bit of removal too, because you want to get rid of the 1 tough power creature your opponent can have. Because it only takes a 1 power creature to block this. But I think it's really good though. I think it's a B+. It just does so much for you. It's a looter, and it also gives you card advantage without sacrificing board state. And it's all on just 2-drop, so B+, pretty good card. Alright, we're gonna take a look at some flip cards here. We have Curious Homunculus, 1 blue for a 1/1. You can tap it for colorless. You can pay the spender's mana only to cast an instant or sorcery. So it's a pretty bad version of Vodalian Arcanist. But if you have 3 or more instant or sorcery, you transform it into a 3/4 prowess that makes all your instant sorceries less. So this is like a build around C+. If I'm a blue-red spell deck, I want this card, because it's a card that does the things that Vodalian Arcanist does, but then in the late game it turns into a real threat. So, but if I'm not spell deck, it's an F. I just wouldn't play it. Daring Sleuth, 1 and blue for 2/1. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you transform it into a 3/2 with prowess, and whenever it is common time to play, investigate. Not a great card, because the clue deck is not really looking for this type of card. It's a cheap 2-drop that turns into a prowess that can do something. I don't think it's particularly good. It's like a D+. And if you're a clue deck, maybe you can bump it up to C-. Even not even good, that good then. Next card I have was one of the biggest bombs in the set. Doesn't of Perfection. 3 blue for 5/4 flyer. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token. Doesn't have flying, but if you have 3 or more wizards, you transform it. So this could be 1 token or some other wizards. And it transforms into a 6/5 flyer that give all your wizards +2/+1 and flying. So the tokens you made become Delvers. And it still has you whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, create a 1/1 human wizard. So it's a 5/4 flyer for 5 that gives you extra bonus whenever you cast a creature. So that's just a sick card. It's an A. Could even be an A+ in a very heavy spells deck. But it doesn't take much. And it would always play it A. And we have 2 more blue cards. Flip cards. Startled Awake. 2 blue for a mythic. Target opponent mills 13 cards. So this could be another piece of the mill deck. But then you can flip it for 5 mana onto the battlefield as a 1/1 with Skulk. And whenever this combatant should play, return it to its hand. And then you can mill for 13 again. So if you hit once and you can spend the mana and all this stuff, you're gonna mill your opponent for 26. That's usually enough at that point. So if you're starting the game with 7 cards and you've drawn 7 cards at that point. So your opponent is dead then. It's very slow though. But it can be good in a mill deck. So it's mostly an F, but you can build around this as a good sideboard card. Or you can have it as a plan for a mill deck. But I think it's too slow. You have to pay 4 mana first. Then you have to pay 5 mana to get it into play. Then it has to survive and hit. Your opponent can't have a token. And then you have to pay 4 mana again. So it's like a D, but it could also be a build around A- if in a mill deck. Or sideboard A- in a... Because sometimes you only need to cast this once against a controller. Oh, Thing in the Ice. This is a nice one. 1 blue for 0/4 Defender. It has 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery, you remove a counter from it, and then it flips into a 7/8 that returns all non-horror creatures to on its hand. At that point, you usually win the game because you're left with a 7/8 that can attack. The opponent's not going to have any blockers, and you are on the board. And if the spell you play is cheap, you can also recast your creatures that gets bounced. So it's a build around A-, I think. In a heavy spell deck, it's fantastic because it also blocks early as a 0/4, and then eventually it gets this huge trigger going. Black. Arms of the Vein. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Madness for a black. Even if I'm madnessing, this card is not that good because you're still down a card. So I think it's an F. Madness is a nice ability when you can get it for free, but this you're just down a card. I don't like it. Biting Raid. 2 black. All creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Madness 2 and a black. It's fine. It's a pretty good sideboard card against a small token deck. It can be like a sideboard B. But I don't like this card. Even if I'm heavy madness, there is no guarantee that the -2/-2 does much for me. So I think it's a D, but it's a sideboard B. Very good against the white decks. Borrowed Malevolence. Black mana, escalate 2. So if you want all the modes, you have to pay 3 mana. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So it's like a Skullduggery, but you have to pay 3 mana instead of 1. But it can be pretty nice. The dream scenario is that you get a 2/1. It doesn't happen that often, but this usually does the trick. I think it's a C. It's a card you can put in your black decks, and it's not bad. And it can be pretty good in some matchups, but it's not that easy to engineer a 2/1. It's going to happen some amount of the time. And some games it's not going to do almost anything. So it's kind of ups and downs. Call the Bloodline. 1 black for an uncommon enchantment. Pay 1, discard a card. You create a 1/1 black vampire knight with lifelink. Activate only once each turn. Pretty good if you're trying to get Delirium. You can eventually get there with this card. You discard lands or artifacts or card types that are hard to get there. I mean, these are creatures and instants. And it's also good with Madness. So it has a home in almost every black deck. If you got Madness, you want it. because you can create a bunch of 1/1s almost for free, and then when you run out of things to do with your lands, you can make 1/1s. I think it's pretty solid. It's about a B-. I remember the card being pretty good in almost all black decks. Certain Death, 5 and a black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature, its controller loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. It's not unplayable, it's better if you're a little more slow. You want this as a catch-all answer for a creature, and the life drain makes up a little bit for it. It's not a card you want more than one off, but I think it's playable. It's like a C-. It's okay. Sometimes you just need to kill a creature, but you can't play too many of these. C-. Collective Brutality, 1 and a black for sorcery, rare. And it as escalate, discard a card. So if you want all 3 modes, you have to discard 2 cards. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose an instant sorcery from it, that play discards that card. So it's a pretty weak discard spell, but you can get there sometimes, sort of like a duress almost. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This is much worse in limited than in constructed. It's not a bad card though. It's I think it's about a C+, B-. Usually it's just -2/-2. It helps with Delirium. Sorcery is not the hardest card type to get, but you can also discard a land and then you're halfway to Delirium. But the problem is, of course, that it's 2 of the modes are pretty weak in limited. So I think about a C+ for Collective Brutality. It's not like a bomb or anything. Crow of Dark Tidings. This is a good Delirium enabler. 2 and a black for a 2/1 flyer. When it ends the battlefield or dies, mill 2 cards. So that helps with Delirium, or if you got some graveyard stuff. This card usually by itself gets you like halfway there to Delirium, because it's hard to mill like 2 of the same card type. So if I'm a Delirium deck, I want this card. I think it's a C in a Delirium deck. And if I'm not using the graveyard too much, it's like a C-, D+ probably. But it's like a C in a Delirium. It could be kind of a workhorse. Eventually, if you mill 4 cards with this, it's a lot of cards. Dark Salvation, a rare. XX black for a sorcery. Target player creates X2 black zombie creature tokens, then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. You don't have to be a zombie deck to play this card. This is just a fantastic card in every deck. The common scenario is that you pay 5 mana, you get 2 2/2s and kill a 2 toughness creature. That's just a fantastic deal. It almost feels like a free for one. It's not uncommon either to cast this for 7, then you get 3 2/2s and give a creature -3/-3. You can even get more if you got zombies. So in a zombie deck it's like an A, and in a non-zombie deck it's like an A-, I think. It's a very good card though. It doesn't get to A+, because it doesn't kill the biggest of things, but it's like an A-. Very good card though. And casting this for 3 mana, sort of like a mini ambulatory edifice, is nice if you're stuck on lands and can't do much, especially if you get to kill something. A 2/2 that gives something -1/-1, it's not a terrible card. But you prefer to cast it for X2 or 3. Don't try to cast it for 4 if you're not top decking it late. You don't need to do that to win the game. Deadweight, black mana for enchantment aura. Enchant creature gets -2/-2. Really solid, especially with Delirium. Enchantment is a hard card type to get. So in a Delirium deck it's like a B-, in a regular deck it's like a C+. Pretty solid. Also nice with the white 3/2 that brings back an aura. Because the thing about Deadweight is that it usually kills a 2 toughness creature and then goes to the graveyard. You can put it on something large and shrink it too, but then it doesn't go to your graveyard, so remember that. Diagraph Colossus. 2 and a black for a 2/2, zombie giant. And it ends the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on for each zombie card in your graveyard, and whenever you cast a zombie spell you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Really nice. You only need like 1 trigger for this to be worth it, so if you're super heavy zombies it's like an A-, where it's just fantastic. It's going to be big when it comes in, and it's going to give you a lot of zombies. If I have like 3 zombies in my deck, it's playable. It's like a C+. If I got like 5, 6, 7 zombies, about a B-. So it all depends on how many zombies you have. But you only need to get 1 extra zombie for this card to be good. Yes, the creature comes into play tapped, but you're still up so many stats that it's worth it. But in a heavy zombie deck, it's just insane. So I think if I got it pick one, I would try to build around it pretty hard, because there are some good zombie payoffs. Dusk Feaster, 5 black for a 4/5, and with Delirium it costs 2 less. Has flying, of course. So I don't like this card too much. In a heavy Delirium deck, yes, you may be able to cast it for 5. A 5 mana 4/5 is good, it's like a B. But the fact that it's not always gonna get there, and sometimes the Delirium payoff doesn't matter, in the sense that by the point you get Delirium, you could even afford 7 mana. Sometimes Delirium happens later. So I think it's, in a Delirium deck, it's like a C-, and outside D something. It's not a great card, I don't think. Because 7 mana for 4/5 is just too bad. Ever After, 4 black. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, and they become zombies. And then you put Ever After on the bottom, which means that you can't rebuy this, but it makes it so you can't deck. I actually had a deck once where I used Ever After to loop my entire deck and had a 5 mana artifact. I put cards on the bottom. It was fun. But this is a good card. I mean, regrowing 2 creatures to the battlefield is very powerful. Unlike regrowing 1, regrowing 2, it's just so much better, because you're getting back on the board so hard. And yeah, I like it. I think it's a B. It doesn't get higher than a B because it is slow and somewhat clunky, and sometimes you're not going to get back a fantastic card, but I mean, it's card advantage, and it's card advantage that also gives you good board presence. And that's the kind of card advantage I like. Gets better if you got Self-Mill. I would play Crow of Dark Tidings with this card, even if I didn't have too much Delirium, because that just enables this card too hard. Because if you only get back 1 creature, it's pretty bad. Gavony Unhallowed, 3 and black for a 2/4 zombie, good creature type. And when another creature you control dies, it gets a counter. So this is an interesting card. It's like the perfect mid-range card, I want to say. It's not good in an aggressive deck, and it's not that good in a controlling deck. It's perfect in a deck that is mid-range, has a reasonable amount of creatures that trade. Because you play this on turn 4, and then a lot of trades happens, and eventually, then when the dust settles, this is like a 6/8. It also has good creature types. So I think in a mid-range zombie deck, this is a C+. I want 1 or 2 of these. Especially when I can trade creatures away from value. It triggers when you sacrifice your creatures. But if I'm not that, if I'm a controlling deck or an aggressive deck, it goes down to a D. So this is a perfect mid-range card, I think. Good Colors Accomplished. This is not a zombie, although it feels like it. 1 and a black for a 2/2. And you can pay 3 and a black exile from your graveyard to make a zombie 2/2. Pretty solid card. It reminds me a little bit of the 2 and a white 3/2, in that it's a good body that becomes something good late. This is better on the front side and worse on the back side. I mean, the back side is the 2/2. I'd rather pay 2 mana for a 1/1 fly than 4 mana for a 2/2. But I'd rather have a 2/2 for 2 than a 3/2 for 3. I think it's pretty solid. It's like a C+. It's a good 2-drop. You can play early trade, and then you're getting a good creature with a relevant creature type. So this is a solid card in a black deck, C+. I like it. Gives us Pitting, another card I like. 2 black, and you create 2 zombies, and it has Madness for 2 and a black. So this card I like much more than the -2/-2, because 2/2 zombies is almost always a good, especially in a zombie deck. And the Madness means that when you Madness it, you are getting up cards. So I don't even have to be a Madness. In any black deck, this is like a C+. But if you're a zombie deck or a card with Madness enables, it gets up to a B, I think. It's just when you Madness this card, it just feels so good. Also remember that Madness can happen at instant speed, and getting 2/2 blockers out of nowhere is good. And zombie deck obviously loves this card too. So it's a C+ or a B depending on the deck. Graph Harvest, another zombie payoff. Black mana for an enchantment. Zombies you control have menace, and you can pay 3 and a black, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. This is a little too slow. You're gonna have to pay a lot before this does something. Giving your zombies menace is nice, but they usually are pretty small, so there are double blocks available. It helps you go wide though, so I don't think it's unplayable, it's just not great. I think it's like a D. I was never very impressed by that card. Grotesque Mutation, 1 and a black, instant, target creature get +3/+1 and gains lifelink at return. It's okay, the problem is that the toughness boost is so low that it may not even survive the combat. This is gonna be nice in some matchups, but I think this is mediocre just because things have to line up so nicely for this card to do its thing. So I think it's a D+, I don't love it too much. Next card is great, Haunted Dead, 3 and a black for a 2/2. And when it ends the battlefield, you get a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. It is a zombie too, by the way. So already it's nice. It's not a fantastic card, but it's pretty good. It's nothing terrible. But then you can play 1 black, discard 2 cards and return from your grave to play battlefield tap, and you're getting a 1/1 spirit. This is rock solid. You're getting 2 bodies, one of them is evasive, and you can bring it back when you're running out of things to do. I think it's a B-, especially in a zombie deck. Indulgent Aristocrat, black for a 1/1 vampire, so now we have a vampire, lifelink. And you can sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. I never liked this card too much. I mean, black usually ended up being more of a zombie deck. But if you are black-red vampires, I guess you could play it. So it's like a build around C+, C+ in a vampire deck. And if you're not playing a vampire deck, it's like almost like an F. Like a D- at least. The next one though. Liliana the Last Hope, a real bomb. 3 mana planeswalker. 1 black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. So +1 up to 1 target creature get -2, -1 until end of your next turn. So that can sometimes just kill things, which is unusual. I mean, we have some Jaces that do give -, but this one also gives toughness, so that's going to be even harder to attack. And it sometimes just kills things out of nowhere, or at least makes it harder for them to attack Liliana. -2, you mill 2 cards and you return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. You often want to do it if you already have a creature card in your graveyard, because whiffing is kind of bad. But that also helps with Delirium, it's card advantage, you can play it, and -2, and you're left with Liliana and up a card. And it has the -7, which is actually not undead. It happens, it can definitely happen. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, you get X2 to black zombies, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So if you got no other zombies, you get 2, and then you get 4, and then you get 6, and you win the game. And the fact of the matter is that the +1 protects Liliana pretty well, so it's not uncommon to play Liliana ++++, and then minus ultimate win the game. Liliana is an A. I don't think it gets to A+, because if you draw it late in the game, it might not be insane. I mean, it's still an A though. Great card. Liliana's Elite, 2 and a black for a 1/1. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. So it's very good with self-mill. It's like a build around. It's like a build around C+. It's never amazing because you have to play it early. It's really bad. So it can be, if I'm very heavy self-mill, I'm going to put it in my deck. But I'm going to stay away from it otherwise. C+ in a good self-mill deck though. Macabre Waltz. 1 and a black for a sorcery, return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard and discard a card. So that works with both Delirium and Madness, the last thing, but it can be pretty expensive. If I'm Madness, I like it. You can often just trade off and then get some things back. Or if I'm having Delirium. Having creatures with good and comes into play effect is nice too. I think it's like in a dedicated of those decks, it's like a C+, and it's like a C- in a regular deck. You don't often get to return 2 creatures just like that, and having to discard a card is a little annoying too. So C- in a regular deck, but if you're enabling Delirium or Madness, it's like a C+. Merciless Resolve, 2 and a black instant. As an additional cost, you cost to sacrifice a creature or land, you draw 2 cards. So it's a really bad village choice, but you can sacrifice a land. I don't think it's great. Yes, it helps with Delirium. But 3 mana and giving up a resource for drawing 2 cards is not where I want to be. So I think it's a D, but if a deck that really wants to get to Delirium, sure, you can play it around like a C-. Mindruck Demon, 2 black for a 4/5 flying trample. And when it ends battle for you, mill 4 cards, and it has Delirium, which is sort of like a negative, except if you have Delirium. You lose 4 life unless you have 4 or more card types. This is a great card because it's a 4/5 flying trample for 4 that helps you get to Delirium. And even if you don't have Delirium, yes, you're losing 4 life, you can attack back for 4. So it's a kind of card, if you're aggressive, it's like an A-, Or if your Delirium is like an A-, because it's a great card that also helps you get to Delirium. If I am a controlling deck somehow, it's a little less good. I probably would still play it, but I would be a little more careful with it. I would like play other 4-drops first. Then it's like a B-, but it's like an A- in an aggressive deck. It's really good though. You're gonna get cards in your graveyard naturally anyway, and then when you mill 4 cards, that's a lot. It's gonna help you get Delirium too. So it's a really good card. I would first pick that card. Mockroot Necropod. 5 black for a 7/7 menace. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice another creature or land. I like this card. I think, yes, it's a 6-drop, but sacrificing a land doesn't matter too much once this comes down. And it also can even help you with Delirium or a creature, but mostly you're just going to sacrifice a land. I think this is a C+. I really like this card. It's actually pretty good in a control deck too, because it's a really good finish of a control deck, because the control deck can sacrifice the lands once you got to this, and a 7/7 blocks really well. So C+, could even be a B-. I think this used to be an uncommon, but it's a common now, but I think it's one of the better black commons. Unfortunately, it's not a zombie though. Next card is a zombie though, and it's great. Newscraft Mob. 4 black for a 0/0, but it ends battle with 5 counters on it. Whenever a player casts a spell, so it could be you or an opponent, you remove a counter, but you create a 2/2. So what often happens with this card is that you play it, and if your opponent has a removal spell, they kill it and you get a 2/2. But if your opponent doesn't have a removal spell, it's gonna be pretty fast that you have 5 zombies. And as we saw, a lot of the black cards are payoffs for zombies, giving them death touch, giving -X/-X. There's gonna be a zombie lord later, I think, too. So I think this is a B+, really solid card. And what also you can do is play it, opponent plays play, you get a zombie. You play a spell, you get a zombie, then you trade it off, and you got 2/2 zombies and traded for a card. That's also nice. It's really great also with Reanimate, or like the Macabre Walls, but because this card goes to the graveyard eventually. Olivia's Bloodsworn, 1 black for 2/1, flying, it can't block, so it's like the blue spirit that was the same. But you can play a red and give it haste. So if you're mono black aggressive, it's playable, it's like a C. If you're black red, it gets even better, because then you can spend extra mana to haste up vampires. And this is also you can place 1 black red and give it haste immediately. So in a black red vampire deck, it's about a B-. It's just you're aggressive at that point, so you kind of want this card, and it helps you with your other cards. And if you're not aggressive, it's like or you're not a vampire deck, it's like a D+ maybe. But B- in a vampire deck though. Olivia's Dragoon, this is like the wild mongrel, not really, but 1 black for 2/2, and you can discard a card to give it flying. So that, again, Delirium and Madness. And it's not the worst either, as just getting in there. You're not paying a huge price for a 2/2 anyway. So it's a C+, it's decent. Pick the Brain. 2 black reveal. Opponent reveals their hand, you choose a long-line card from it and exile that card. So it's like a coercion. But Delirium, you get to exile all the cards with the same name. This is a little better than the blue one, because I'd rather play a coercion than like a kind of sorcery. It's still not great though. And the last ability doesn't really matter too much. Your opponent usually don't play multiple copies anyway. So that's a D. It's a card you can play. If your opponent has like an expensive bomb you can't beat, you can play it. It does exile it too. Even if you don't have Delirium, you still get to exile it, so it gets rid of it for good. Relentless Dead, black for a 2/2 menace. When it dies, you may pay black, and if you do, return to its owner's hand. So it's sort of unkillable as long as you can have a black mana up. You might consider holding this until you have 3 black mana, so you can always get it back. And whenever it dies, you may pay X, and when you do, you can return another target zombie with manually X from graveyard to the battlefield. And that doesn't require black. So you can do both. You can pay both black, get this back, and then get another back. So it's great. In a zombie deck, it's like a B. In a regular deck, it's like a B-. It's never a bad card. A 2/2 menace for 2 that when it dies, it comes back. It's like a B minus. It's a B if you are heavy black. You want to be heavy black with this card because you want to cast it early, but it's okay. Rise from the grave, 4 and a black. Put a creature card from a grave onto the battlefield under your control. And it's a black zombie in addition to all those colors and types. It's okay, it's like the card from New Phyrexia. The fact that it becomes a zombie is nice, but doesn't matter too much. It's like a D+. It's okay. Alright, now we have a controversial card, I remember. Ruthless Disposal, 4 and a black for a sorcery. And as an additional cost a spell, you discard a card and sacrifice a creature. That's a hefty cost. But you get to give 2 target creature -13/-13 until the end of turn. So, as the dust settles, you're down a card. You spend this, discard a card and sacrifice a creature. Now, the way to break this card is to make those cards not do much. Maybe you discard a card with Madness, although this costs 5, so that's hard. Maybe you discard an irrelevant card, sacrifice an irrelevant creatures. If the stars align, this card is good, but you need to do a lot of work. You need to have expendable creatures, cards you want to discard. And this also helps you a little bit with Delirium. Puts a sorcery, a land maybe, and a creature. If all the stars align, this could perform like a B. But it can also be an F if you're not set up. If you're just putting this in a random deck with no way to break it, you're actually down a card. And oftentimes you have to kill something mopey with it too. Your opponent also needs to have 2 good targets, if you know what I mean. So if the stars align, it could be a good card, but you need to work for it. Sanitarium Skeleton, black mana for a 1/2. Pay 2 and a black, return it from your graveyard to hand. So if you're not abusing this card, it's not great. It's like a cheap little card that can come back, but it's very clunky. It's nice if you got discard outlets, like for example the Call the Bloodline that made vampires. That's a nice combo. 4 mana, make a 1/1 every turn. So if you're building around, it's like a C, but it's like a D+ in a regular deck. It's not that good. It's just too expensive to bring back. Stromkirk Condemn, black for a 2/2, another black card. So these cards sort of demand you to play a lot of swamps to have them got down on curve. Discard a card, vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Activate only once each turn. So this includes itself. It's solid in a vampire deck. If you're only giving this +1/+1, it's not particularly good. But you are not paying a huge price for this. You are paying black. So if you're heavy black, you should probably just play this, even if you don't have too many other vampires. But it's about a C+. I don't think it's a particularly exciting card. It's a little too hard to get down. But it has a powerful effect though. But it's like a C+. Raven Foulbloods, 2 and a black for a 3/2. And Delirium gets +1/+1 and has Menace. It's okay. The problem is that by the time you get Menace, your opponent probably got a reasonable wide board. And this is pretty unimpressive before that. It is a zombie, so you know when you want this card. It's about C-. It's okay. Free of Perdition. 3 and a black for a 0/13 Defender. So what's up? Well, you can tap it, exile target opponent's life total with Free of Perdition's toughness. So you can tap this and make your opponent go down to 13 life. I mean, if your opponent is at 20, your opponent took 7 damage. And then this becomes a 0/20, whatever that's worth. If you got a way to make this smaller somehow, I don't know what that could be. Could be decent. But this is a hard card to work. If you play this on turn 4, you haven't even attacked your opponent. You can deal your opponent 7. The problem is, dealing your opponent 7 when they are at 20 is much worse than dealing your opponent 7 when they are at 10. So, this is a very weird card. I don't think it's super good. I think it's a D+. It's not great. It just doesn't fit. It has this activated ability that is a burn spell. But I guess it combos with the next card, I suppose. Next card is Triskaidekaphobia, 3 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose 1. Each player with exactly 13 life loses the game, then each player gains 1 life. Or each player with exactly 13 life loses the game, then each player loses 1 life. So the goal with this card is to get your opponent to 13, and you don't want to be there yourself. Because if you play this and your opponent can put you to 13, you immediately lose the game. But you can also get your opponent down to 14 And then this is a 2-turn clock, because you can make your opponent lose a life and then the next turn it gets there. This is also a very hard card to work. What you want with this card is sort of have it as a surprise. You want to attack your opponent in a weird way, put them down to 14 or 13, or even 12, I suppose, and then play this. I'm not sure what deck wants this. I think it's an F, but there are some memes you can do. Maybe you have some amount of small creatures, or maybe you have the Free of Perditions. But I think it's an F. It's very hard to get it to work. Weirded Vampire, 3 and a black for a 3/3, Madness 2 and a black. Yeah, it's okay. In a Madness deck it goes probably up to a C+. It can be pretty nice to have it. If you can cast it for free, you are sort of up cards, but that depends on whether the card you discarded, if you got a card worth of value out of the discard. Otherwise, it's just a Grey Ogre. So it's like a D+, but it could be a C+ in a dedicated Madness deck that can play this for value. Alright, we got some double-faced cards here. First is Accursed Witch, 3 and a black for a 4/2. Spells your opponent casts a target Accursed Witch costs 1 less to cast. That's weird, but when it dies, it returns onto the battlefield transformed as a infectious curse. So spells you cast a target enchant play cost 1 less to cast. That doesn't matter too much. I guess burn spells now cost 1 less, or discard spells. But at the beginning of each enchanted play's upkeep, that play loses 1 life and you gain life. That's a pretty annoying card. The goal with this card is to play it and trade it for something worth a card, and then you're left with this annoying enchantment that drains your opponent every turn. And while that card usually isn't that good on its own, if you got to trade this for a card, you are ahead. This is a B-. Remember this card being very annoying to play against. And it's hard to get around it, because a 4/2, it's very hard to ignore. At least especially early in the game. So it's a B-. It's a pretty good card. Next is Graph Rat. So this is 1 and black for a 2/1. And it melds with Midnight Scavenger, which is a very good card actually. So this is a card that melds into a 5/6 haste menace and pumps your other team. It's pretty good. I would only play this if I had the Midnight Scavengers, and then it's like a C. It's still not the greatest, but it is nice that you can play this, trade it off, and then get it back to the Scavengers, and then you're getting this extra bonus. But I don't think it's super necessary. It's like a C if you got the next card. We're gonna get to that in a second. First, Kindly Stranger, 2 and a black for a 2/3 uncommon. And we have Delirium to transform it into a 4/3 that destroys a creature. Fantastic card in a Delirium deck, because for 6 mana that you can pay in installments, a 4/3 that destroys creature is just sick. That's just like a, you know, the black, white, gold card from the latest set. So in a Delirium deck, it's like a B. It doesn't have the raw power to get to A. It's a little too clunky. And you also have to work for Delirium. But this is a good card. I think I would play it in most of my black decks, because eventually you're going to get to Delirium, and then it's just a great card. And in the meantime, it's a 2/3 for free, which can block and do things. So B- for Kindly Strange. B in the Delirium deck, I guess. Here we have Midnight Scavenger, 4 and a black for a 3/3, and when it ends the battlefield, you may return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand, and then melts with Graph Rats. But it's pretty solid, even if you don't need to have Graph Rats for this card to be good. This is like the Accursed Paladin from the latest set. It does get -1/-1, and doesn't have Toxic, so it's worse, but it's solid. It's like a C+. It's a little overcosted, of course, 5 mana 3/3, but you are getting a card back, so it's sort of card advantage. So C+ for that card. And that is black. Red. Alchemist Greeting, 4 and a red, deals sorcery, deals 4 damage to target creature, madness 1 and red. So if you're not madnessing it, it's clunky like a D. But if you can madness it, it turns about like a C+ B-, because then you're up a card and mana. So you want the madness enablers. Pretty nice in black red. You have like the 1 and black 2/2 that you can discard a card, give it flying. So ranges from mediocre to great, depending on if you can enable madness. But this is a card that you really want to enable madness. It is nice though that if you don't draw the madness enabler, it is castable. It's just not a good card, but that's Pretty powerful card though. Assembled Alphas, 5 and a red for a 5/5. Whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it is 3 damage to that creature and 3 damage to that creature's controller. So this is incredibly powerful because it can't gang block it with 3 toughness creatures. And if you gang block it with larger creatures, you're probably going to kill all of them because they take 3. Also, if you block this card with 3 creatures, your opponents are taking 9 to the face. And if your opponent doesn't block, it takes 5. It also works on blocks. Very powerful card. A little out of place for red. Red is kind of aggressive, but it's like a B. It just holds down the fort and dominates the board. Little expensive though, but great. B. Avacyn's Judgment, 1 and a red. It has Madness X and a red. So if you don't Madness it, it deals 2 damage divided as you choose. So it's like a twin bolt. This sort of effect. It's like a C. It's okay. You rarely get to kill 2 things. But if you Madness it, you get to cast it for X and divide it as you choose. So if you Madness it for 5, you can deal 4. So this is like the Ultimate Squid on Turbo. Except here it's like an A if you can Madness it. But the thing is, you want very cheap Madness outlets because the X is expensive. But if you can Madness it, it often wins the game. It's like a Pyrotechnics at that point. With the added value that you got to discard and maybe got some value out of that. So if your deck is full of cheap Madness enablers, it's like an A. And if not, it's like a C. Bedlam Reveler, 6 red for a 3/4 prowess. Costs 1 less to cast for each instant sorcery in graveyard. And when it's bad, if you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So this is you want to play this as your last card. And it's really good because the trick with this card is to play it with a lot of cheap spells and then empty your hand and reload. And then you're left with a 3/4 that's going to grow from all the cards you play. So it's like a build around, almost like I want to say it's like an B+ range, because it gets if you can cast this for like 5-6 mana and draw 3 cards, it's insane. It's not always gonna do that because you're gonna have some cards left in your hand because some of the spells are card draw spells, but you can prioritize them less, I guess. But it's like a build around B+, pretty good. Next card is controversial. Blood Mist, 3 and a red. At the beginning of combat of your turn, target creature you control gets double strike until end of turn. So clearly you want to play this in an aggressive deck. It does nothing on defense. You want to play it with large creatures as well, and preferably something with trample. I never liked this card, but I could see it being good. It can break up some board stalls. Let's say you're playing a deck and your opponent tries to put up the defenses. You play this and then you put the effect on a creature and then send in 1 creature every turn. So I never liked this card. I'm going to give it a D, but I can see some decks, if you got something large with a reasonable amount of creatures with tramp, but it could perform about like a C. I never liked the card, of D for me. Blood Mad Vampire, 2 and a red for a 4/1. Whenever it is combos on a player, put a counter on it, Madness 1 and a red. So it's not going to hit your opponent too many times because it is a 4/1. But if you can Madness it, it's okay. It's like you can get it as a free card. So it's like a C+ in a Madness deck. Otherwise, it's probably not even that good. So C- in a normal deck, C+ in a deck with Madness. Bird Hostility. Red for an instant, escalate 3. So you can get both if you want. Target creature +3/+0 until end of turn. Target creature against first strike. So sometimes you can play this for 1 mana and give first strike. It's very rare to play this for 1 mana and get +3/+0. I mean, if you want to punch through a wall, you can do it. For 4 mana, you can sometimes get like a 2-for-1, but it's rare. This is like the black card, except a little worse, I think. So it's like a C-. It's not great. Burn from Within, X and a red, deals X damage to any target. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it loses indestructible, and it also gets X. Yeah, it's solid. It's like all these X spells, they are nice. You can sometimes kill your opponent. I think it's about a B+. I don't think it gets higher than that, because these cards are almost always ineffective at killing creatures. The nice cards about them is that you can sometimes win the game by killing your opponent, but that doesn't happen that often. It's a good card, right? It's a B+. Collective Defiance, another rare, 1 red, escalate 1, so you can discard all the cards in your hand, or you can target your opponent and draw that many cards. So you get to reload your hand for all the cards in the hand. It deals 4 damage to a creature, or it deals 3 damage to an opponent. It's a good card. I think it's another B. It's it oftentimes just 3 mana kill a creature, which is solid, but then it has some extra text that does some things. Maybe it's a B+, but it's okay. It's not a bomb, but it's solid. Deranged Whelp, 1 red for a 2/1 menace. Solid, I would give it a C+, because almost all red decks are aggressive and want this card. And it's a really nice on turn 2. But it does fall off in the later stage of the game. But I think it's a C+ just because how good it is on turn 2. Devil's Playground, 4 red. You create 4 1/1 devils, and when they die, deals 1 damage on the target. So those of you who played with Burn Down the House, this is a different version. You get an additional 1/1, but you don't have the option to sweep the board. But it's really good. It's really annoying for a opponent to play. It's another B. The only downside is that it's 6 mana, and red decks are usually more low to the ground aggressive. Ember Eyewolf, 1 red for a 1/2 common, haste, and you can pay 1 red, give it +2/+0. Pretty mediocre. It's the problem with this card is just trades with too many things, and yeah, pretty nice with the double strike enchantment, I guess, but it's like a D+, not great. Falconrat's Gorge, a red for a 2/1, and each vampire creature card I own that isn't on the battlefield has madness, and the madness is equal to its mana cost. Yeah, that doesn't matter too much, but it means that your random vampires in your hand gets madness, which could be good. It is a 2/1 for 1, so it's not that bad. I think it's a C+. It's good stats and some minor upside. Fiery Temper, 1 red, and uncommon this time. It used to be common. It has 3 damage to any target, and it has madness for red. This is sort of like the card I was talking about before, the Alchemist Greeting, but this one is more playable without madness, and it's about the same when you madness it. It's like instead of 4 damage to anything for 2, you get 3 damage to anything, even the face, which the other card didn't get. So it is better. I think it's a B-. In a really dedicated madness, it could be like a B. Flameblade Angel, 4 red for a 4/4 flyer. And whenever a sorcerer opponent controller deals damage to you or permanent controls, you may have Flameblade Angel did 1 damage to that sword's controller. Yeah, this is worse than the Devil's Playground. I think it's a big flyer that dinks your opponent a little bit whenever you get into combat. It is powerful. You can play this, attack all, and then your opponent takes 1 for each creature. But it is also expensive. It's about a B- though. It's good, but it's not. It doesn't deal damage to creatures, but it can be pretty powerful as a top end. Sort of reminds me of that white 4/3 flyer. Has a little bit of a similar vibe. Probably is worse because that card tapped all your opponent's creatures. This one, you only dealt 1. It has 1 more toughness, but it's like a B-, I think. Furyblade Vampire, 1 red for 1/2 trample. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may discard a card. If you do, it gets +3/+0. So that can enable madness mostly in red, but can even have delirium if you are maybe a red-green deck. It's okay. It's you are paying a price, but in a madness deck I would play it. In a madness deck it's like a C+. Outside of a madness, if I'm aggressive, I could also see it as a C. It's okay. Galvanic Bombardment, red, and it is X damage to any creature. X is 2 plus the number of discard in your graveyard. So it's the first one deals 2, and the second one deals 3, third one deals 4. So I would probably always play the first one, solid, like a C, to deal 2 to a creature, maybe even C+. But then once you get 3 or 4, they just go up to like a B-. But it's pretty solid. Oh man, the next one is hard to evaluate. Gold Knight Castigator, 2 red for a 4/9 flying haste. And if a sorcerer will deal damage to you, it deals double that damage to you. So all your opponent's unblocked creatures now deal double, so that's scary. And if a sorcerer will deal damage to this, it deals double that damage, which doesn't matter too much because this has 9 toughness. But if your opponent has a 5 mana burn spell, I guess you can kill it. This card I was never a huge believer in. I just felt like it was opening up yourself to a blowout. So if I'm hyper aggressive, where I don't really care about what my opponent does, which isn't that many decks, I could see this being like a B-, but I never liked this card. I think it's like a C-, D+ in most decks. Howlpack Wolf, 2 red for a 3/3, and it can't block unless you control another wolf or werewolf. So that's a weird stat line. You don't even want to block with some of these cards, and if you do, why are you playing this card? It's okay, I think it's like a C, but if you want a beater, it's okay. Incendiary Flow. 1 on red deals 3 damage to any target, which includes players. And if a creature that damages this way, exile it. It's like a B-, really solid. 2 mana for 3 and exiling is nice. I wish it were an instant, then it would get a B, but now it's a B-. It goes phase, which is nice. Insatiable Gorgus, 2 red for a 5/3, attacks each combat if able. So if it didn't have more text, it would be mediocre, like a C-, D+. But it has Madness 3 in a red, so if I have a Madness Enablers, I like it. Because this also can get flashed in and eat something if you're Madnessing it. So if I'm Madness, I probably want it about like a C+. Insolent Neonate. This is a card that is better than it looks. 1 red mana for a 1/1 menace. And you can discard a card, sacrifice this, draw a card. So that enables Madness. It also helps with Delirium if you're red-green. It also comes down on turn 1, dinks, and then in the late game you can discard a land and cash it in for another card. I think this is a C+. I was very impressed by this card. It just does enough things. It's like a 1-drop that does things in the late game. Enables Madness and cashes it in for a new card. It's just really good. Lightning Axe, another fantastic card. 1 red mana for an instant. An additional cost to cast this play. Discard a card to play 5. And it is 5 damage on a creature. So great with Madness. In a Madness deck it's a B. It's like a B- in another deck. Discarding a card in this set is almost sometimes an upside. And when you're paying 1 red mana to deal 5. You know what? I changed my mind. It's a B+ in the right deck. B+ for Lightning Axe. It's a card I'm very happy to first pick. Mad Prophet, 3 in a red for a 2/2 haste. You can discard a card and draw a card. So another Madness Enabler. And this is just a good card. It's much better in this set than it was in Avacyn Restored. It's another B-. It's just a card that you can just, whenever you can rum it without paying mana, that's very good. And since it has haste, you can do it right away. And then it enables all your Madness stuff. Just a solid card. Magmatic Chasm, 1 on a red. Sorcery. Creature without flying can't block this turn. So this is much worse than Haphazardous Bombardment, because first of all flyers can block, and then it doesn't have the mode of dealing 1. And the fact that it costs 2 rather than 4 doesn't matter too much, because you never cast this on turn 2 anyway. I think it's a D. If you have a deck with a lot of high-powered creatures and not that much removal, it could be good as a mice card sometimes. But I don't think it's particularly good. D. Make Mischief, 2 in a red. Deals 1 damage to any target, and you get one of those devils that deals 1 damage when it dies. I like this card. I think it's super solid. It's a C+. You ideally want to kill something, but if nothing else, you can dink your opponent for 1 and make a 1/1, and you can maybe trade for a 2/2. So it doesn't have that low of a ceiling. It's solid. I think it's a C+. So. Mirror-Wing Dragon, 3 red for a 4/5 flyer. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Mirror-Wing Dragon, that player copies that spell for each other creature they control that the spell could target. And each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So, the blowout scenario with this card is if your opponent casts something that deals 5 to a creature. Then your opponent can kill all your creature. No, wait, sorry. If your opponent casts a burn spell on this, they have to kill all their own creatures. Sorry. But the blowout scenario is that if your opponent has a pump spell, they can put the pump spell on the Mirror-Wing Dragon, then get that pump spell on all their creatures. I'm remembering winning a game of Limited once. My opponent played Mirror-Wing Dragon, and I casted some giant growth on my opponent's Mirror-Wing Dragon, and I got that on all my creatures, and then when I won the game. But this is a fantastic card, because if your opponent wants to kill this, they're gonna go kill some of their own creatures as well. So the only bad thing is that your opponent has some positive card that can pump the Mirror-Wing Dragon. But that doesn't happen very often. That was a very narrow scenario. This is like an A-, I think. A 4/5 flyer for Fadas that makes it very hard to kill. It almost has ward in some sense. So it's an A-. Now here is Wrath, 2 in a red for a sorcery. You discard X cards and then it deals damage equal to the total mana value of discarded cards. So that works with Madness. It's a good card. You want to build around it a little bit with Madness, but if you discard in like a 5-drop and deal 5, that's pretty good. It's a B+, I think, somewhere around that. Better if you have Madness cards, and you are up boards you can't hit players, just remember that. But it's good, but you have to do a little bit of work with Madness for it, or some expensive cards, I guess, because discarding like 2 cards to kill 2 things is not good value. Pyrehound, this is a build run. 3 and a red for a 2/3 with trample. And when you cast an instant sorcery spell, you put a counter on it. +1/+1 counter. Good in a blue-red spells deck. The trample goes a long way to make sure that, because one of the problems with these kinds of cards that grows, like this spell Gorgoage, is that early in the game your opponent can just ignore it. And then later in the game, when it grows very big, your opponent can just jump it. And this gets around that with trample. So it's like a build around C+, so in a blue-red deck, it could be pretty good. Ravenous Bloodseeker, 1 and a red for a 1/3. Discard a card, you get +2/-2. So this is sort of like the black Olivia's Dragoons that gave fly. A little worse, because I rather get flying than +2/-2. But it's okay. It's like a C. It could even be a C+ in a Madness deck, because you just want an enabler sometimes, if you don't get anything better. Red Rush of Adrenaline, red instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 against trample until end of turn. Pretty mediocre, like the black card. Just getting 1 toughness is not great. Trample is nice, but this is like a D+, pretty mediocre trick, honestly. I want more toughness boosting for this type of effect. Yeah. We had a green one similar that did give +2/+2, and that's a world of the difference. Scourge Wolf used to be a rare, now it's uncommon. Red for a 2/2 first strike, and it has double strike if you get Delirium. So it's like the first Delirium card we've seen in red. It's a little out of place, it's good though. If you're a heavy red, it's pretty solid. A 2/2 first strike for 2 is just good, and then in the super late game, it gets Delirium. Of course, by the time this gets Delirium, it might not matter too much, because at the stage a 2/2 double strike might just be whatever. But it's like a C+, I think. It's okay. Nothing fantastic, and I think it's good that they downshifted it to uncommon. Shreds of Sanity, 2 and a red, return up to 1 target instant card and up to 1 target source card from graveyard to your hand and discard a card. So it's like X, and then you exile this. So it's like the black card that return 2 creatures, but you have to do it for spells. It's nice in a blue-red deck, you can usually get some value. You're not up cards, but you're up spells. You have to dawdle around a reasonable amount. So it's like a build around C+ in a blue-red spells deck. It's not great though. It's you are getting back relevant cards, and maybe you discard something bad, but at the end of the day you are paying a lot of mana to just doing the same thing all over again. You do get a bunch of triggers for all your spells, so I guess it's good with the Pyrehound. Sin Prodder, 2 and a red for a 3/2 mana, so already pretty nice. And then at the beginning of your up, you reveal the top card of your library. An opponent may have you put that card into your graveyard. If a player does, it deals damage to that player equals to the card's mana value. Otherwise, you put that card in your hand. So, if it's a land, your opponent's just going to put it into your graveyard. But if it's not, you either get to draw it, or your opponent's going to take damage. All in all, very nice card. A 3/2 mana for 3 is like a C+ already. And the ability bumps it up to like a B. Because it's going to be dealing your opponent a lot of damage or drawing your card. So it's a nice card. Happy to first pick it, like a B. Stensia Masquerade, 2 and a red for enchantment. Attacking creature you control have first strike. Whenever a vampire you control is combat to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has madness. So you can surprise this if you got a madness enabler. And that could be a blowout. It's also nice that you can play this, maybe get some hits in, and then it's harder for your opponent to block. So then your opponent's going to have to make hard decisions about what to do. I always thought this card was a little too clunky and a little too win more. If I already got good attacks, it's going to make them even better. Because if you play this, your opponent still can double block maybe. So I think it's like a build around C in a vampire deck. I was never very too impressed by it. Stromkirk Occultist, 2 and a red for a 3/2 trample. And whenever this comes, I'm sure player you exile the top card of your library, you may play that card. So pretty nice with trample, because if your opponent blocks this with a 2/2, you still get the trigger. And it also has madness of 1 and a red, so that's also nice. I think it's a B-. It's just a rock solid card. You can get it for free with a madness enabler. Your opponent needs to trade for this. It plays great with pump spells, so B-. Thermo Alchemist, 1 and a red for a 0/3. Defender, tap it to wheel damage, 1 damage to each opponent, and because an instant source will untap it. This is a pretty good card even if you don't have too many spells, because it blocks and then it shoots. Your opponent can't block this card. It's like an unblockable creature. So in a blue-red spell deck it's like a B, but in a regular deck it's like C+. But it's a really good card. Tormenting Voice, 1 on a red. An additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, you draw 2 cards. And this has Madness and Delirium. So this is more playable than usual. I think it's a C. It could be a C plus in a Madness deck. If you're discarding a card and paying the Madness, you're actually up a card here. So you got to go around the downside of discarding a card. So with a lot of Madness card, I think it could be a C plus actually. Ulrich Kindred, 2 red for 3/2 trample, and then you can put 3 in a green and target attacking wolf or werewolf indestructible until end of turn. So now you know what red-green is all about, so wolf or werewolves. I like it in red-green, it's very powerful. You can't use the ability on a removal spell, so your opponent can just kill this, but it's pretty threatening. In a red-green werewolf deck, I will give this a C+, and I probably wouldn't play a 3/2 trampler for 3 outside of. It's like a D. Uncaged Fury, this is a finisher. 2 in a red, target creature get +1/+1 against double strike and then end of turn. So if you put this on an unblocked creature, you can sometimes win a game. If you put it on a trample, you can win a game. But unlike the Magmatic Chasm earlier, you can also use this as just as a combo check to win a combat. I think this is a C+. I'm very impressed by this card. Alright, some red flip cards here. Start off by Conduit of Storms, 2 in a red for a 2/3. Whenever it attacks, you add red at the beginning of your next main phase. So you're getting a mana. You can also play 5 mana and transform it, which you can't use the mana for immediately, but if this survives combat, you can do it. And it flips into a 5/4 that whenever it attacks, you get 2 colorless at the beginning of your next main phase. I think this card is solid. It attacks and gives you an extra mana. If your opponent trades, you can still use the mana. But if your opponent don't trade, you might get several instances of the mana. And if you transform it, it's not bad either. And sometimes you can transform it, attack, and then still use the colorless with something else. So I think it's a C+, pretty solid card. I like to put this card in my deck. Gutstuff Arsonist, 4 in a red for a 5/4, and at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform it. So it's like the old werewolf mechanic. It transforms to 6/5 menace. It's like a C-. It's okay. It's nothing special though. It's just you play it for 5 and it's expensive and it takes time for flip, so it's not exciting. Gaia Reach Bandit, another downshift, 2 in a red for a 3/2 haste. And it flips again, and it flips into a 4/3 that you can flip your werewolves immediately. So if you, for example, cast Gutstuff Arsonist, you can immediately make it a 6/5 menace. It's okay. It's nothing wrong with this card. 3/2 haste for 3 is fine, and then it flips into a 4/3 with some additional value. I think it's a C+. It's okay. It's nothing special though. Hanver Garrison. This is a great card, much better. 2 in a red for a 2/3. When it attacks, you get 2 1/1 creatures that are tapped and attacking. And yes, your opponent can sometimes just eat those, but that's going to make it harder to eat the Garrison, and it will take up blockers to do that. And if your opponent wants to till this, maybe the 1/1s get to stay in play. And then it melts into a land, into a 7/4 trample haze. So that's a land that I actually think is worth flipping. But I like this card. I think it's pretty solid. It's like a B-. The only problem is, of course, that sometimes this card doesn't have a clean attack and it doesn't do much. But it's a C+, B-, somewhere around there. And last card is Village Messenger, 1/1 haste. Red mana for 1/1 haste. And again, it flips if no spells were cast into a 2/2 menace. So on turn 1, this is great because it's hard for your opponent to do something. But you also want to be on the play. So this is almost a card that you want to have on the play and side out on the draw, which is weird. But I think it's like a C. The problem with this card is, of course, if you draw it late, it's just going to be too bad. And it's not like it's a 1/1 with utility like Thraben Inspector. It's a card that almost only works in aggressive. I guess you can bump. You can also be more likely to play it if you have werewolf synergies. Okay, that was red. Green. Aim high. 1 and a green. Untap target creature against +2/+2 against reach until end of turn. So it has some ambush potential. Can deal with flyers. And it also can win combats. All these things is like a C-. It's still a pretty mediocre card. But yeah, you can play it. It does things. It just doesn't have any synergies with anything. So it's a card I would be... I would question why I would want to play it in your deck, but the card itself is good. It's just why would you want to play it? It does plug some holes against flyers, I guess. Bloodbriar, 2 green for a 2/3. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is like a build around C+, where if I have clues, got other things to sacrifice, it can be pretty nice. And if I don't want to play it. But if you got clues, it's really good. It grows pretty fast. And it's just... and you don't have to pay any mana either. So build around C+, almost like a build around B- in the right deck. Briar Bridge Patrol, 3 green for a 3/3. Whenever it deals damage to one or more creatures, investigate. So anytime it gets involved into combat, you get the clue. Realistically, that's probably just going to happen once, because your opponent's only going to block this when it can trade. But if your opponent looking to block this with a 2/4, it's not going to be fun, because you're going to get a clue every time and be up cards. And at the beginning of each end step, if you sacrifice 3 or more clues this turn, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That doesn't happen too often, but in a dedicated clue deck, it could. And then you're getting back some of the tempo. So that's mostly a little bit of flavor text bonus, but it can happen. All in all, this is a good card. I would give it a C+. I think it's pretty solid. If it's if you trade it off, you're getting a clue. That's okay. It's not the worst, but you can also have scenarios where you combine it with a pump spell, so maybe there is a room for aim higher. They may get 2 clues, and that's kind of nice. I just think it's a C+, just a very solid card. Another solid card is Byway Courier, 2 green for a 3/2. When it dies, you investigate. So it looks much worse than the Spore Crawler we had in Innistrad Midnight Time, but it has clue synergies, and creatures were worse back then. So I still think it's a C+. It's just a solid card. You always have to do it. It's also Inhuman as the last card, which is important for some card. Clear Shot. So this is a nice one. 2 green. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So it bites. And you can sometimes get a 2/1. Let's say you're 2/2 and tax into a 2/3. You make your creature a 3/3 and eat something else. But that doesn't happen too often, but it often is a solid removal spell. So it's a B-, I think. Pretty good card. Can get blown out by removal. But you can be careful too. Confront the Unknown, green for a 1. Investigate and target creature get +1/+1 until end of turn for each clue you control. So it's weird, because the clue decks aren't necessarily interested in a combat trick, but when this starts to get +3/+3, it becomes pretty good. So it's a weird card. I'm not sure what home it is, but it does create a 1/1. The dream is to win a combat and get a clue for just 1 mana. That's pretty solid. All in all, I think it's around a C. It's a K card, and can get better if you got some synergies. Works pretty nice with Bloodbriar, by the way. Crawling Sensation. This is a fun card. 2 green for enchantment. At the beginning of your up, you may mill 2 cards. And 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard anyway for the first time each turn and create a 1/1 insect. So, statistically, you are milling 2 cards. About a third of the cards in your deck are lands, a little more. So it's hard to do the math, but it's around... You're about 50 to 60% to get a creature. If you can do some milling on your opponent's turn, you may get a 1/1 there. It doesn't help with other self-mill. I never found this card to be particularly good. It was more fun than good, but if you could build some cards that loop your entire deck with this card, with like a Epiphany Golem and stuff. But I think it's a D. It is a little too clunky. The payoff is not even huge. If you would get a 1/1 every turn, it would be good, but you're not guaranteed to even do that. And yeah, it can be decent, but it's a little too clunky. Cryptolith Right, 1 green. Each creature you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. I think this is an F. It just, you're spending a card to make your creatures tap for mana. It's hard to make this work. What happens is that you play this, and then yeah, maybe you can dump your hand at some point, but you are still down a card, and it would take a very special deck for me to want to play this, and I haven't seen it, so I'm gonna give Cryptolith Right an F. Death Cup Cultivator, 1 green for a 2/1, taps to add black or green. So Delirium, it has Death Touch. So I don't need to play black to play this card. I'm gonna play it in all my green decks, because even if you can't use the black mana, I'm still always playing a 2/1 that taps for green. And the fact that it gets Death Touch in the late game is nice, because the late game is where you don't really need the mana anymore, and then you can use the Death Touch. I think it's a B- somewhere around there. I think it's a really great card. I would be happy. B- could even be a B. If you have use for the black mana, it's probably as a B. But a mana dork that turns into a relevant, can trade off for something relevant in the late game, is always very nice. Eldritch Evolution, 1 green, sorcery, and additional cost of costs per sacrifice a creature. You can search a library for a creature card with mana value X or less, where X is 2. So if you're sacrificing a 3-drop, you can get a 5-drop. You are down a card, so I think this is another F. I just don't see it. Maybe if you were green, white, and have Archangel Avacyn, maybe you can play this, but I don't know. I think it's an F. It's just, you're down a card and you're upgrading a creature, but it has to be the exact perfect card to sacrifice for this to do anything. So F for Eldritch Evolution. Gnarlwood Dryad, green for a 1/1 Death Touch, so already pretty decent. And then it gets +2/+2 if you got Delirium. Really solid card. I mean, a 1/1 Death Touch for 1 is okay, but the fact that this also grows into a 3/3 in the late game is nice. So it's a C+. I don't think it's better than that, but especially since if it gets it later in the game, 3/3 Death Touch may not be that good, but it's decent. It's good early and it becomes even better late. So C+ for that card. Graph Mold, 2 green for 2/4. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you gain 3 life. And when you sacrifice a clue, it usually means you're drawing a card, and life gain is pretty nice too. This is a build around C+, I think. If in the right deck, it could be a really important role player. So C+, around C+, B- in the clue deck, because combining life gain with card draw is perfect. Grapple with the Past, 1 green, mill 3 cards, and you may return a creature or land cards from the graveyard to your hand. So it helps you with Delirium. In a Delirium deck, this is about a C+. It helps you with Delirium, because this is an instant, and then you're gonna mill probably a land or a creature, and then get something else back. And you can put the cards that was milled in your graveyard before too. So in a Delirium deck, it's like a C+. In a regular deck, it's like a C-, a little clunky, but it's okay. Groundskeeper, 1 green mana for a 1/1. You can pay 1 green and return a basic land card from your graveyard to your hand. I never liked this card. Even if you are having a lot of self-mill, why would you really want to bring back lands? Yeah, you can probably make some engines where you discard cards. So this is like a build around C+ in a very dedicated deck that can use the lands to discard to do anything. It's good, but it's super slow, and most of the time this is just going to be a D. I don't think it's great. It can be like a build around C+ though. Hamlet Captain. So after all these dirtly human cards, we got a pretty aggressive one. 1 green for 2/2 Human Warrior. Whenever it attacks or blocks other humans you control, get +1/+1 until end. There's no denying that this card is powerful. It's just that it's a little out of place with the other cards. From what I've seen so far, green seems Delirium, dirtly, want to do grindy stuff. So I think it's a C+, but in a human deck, but I don't think it's anything that... When I see Hamlet Captain, I'm not getting excited, you know. But I still think it's a C+. Howlpack Resurgence, 2 green, flash. Each creature you control as a wolf or a werewolf gets +1/+1 and has trample. So if you are like all in wolves or werewolves, this is a glorious anthem with flash, so that's like a B+. But it's probably not going to be the case that all your creatures are wolves or werewolves. And at that point, if this gives the bonus to like half the creatures in your deck, I don't think it's worth it. If it gives bonus like 2/3, probably it's worth it around like a C+. So it's like a build around B+, but most of the time it's not going to be very good. I think I want like 12 to 13 wolves or werewolves if I want to play that card. Because I can see playing a glorious anthem that gives like 2/3 of my creatures +1/+1. But I don't want to go lower than that. Intrepid Provisioner, 3 green for a 3/3 with trample. And when it enters the battlefield, another target human you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. So another little bit of aggressive human cards. So there are some tribal payoffs here, but you see that they are a little bit scattered. I think it's like a C-, not a particularly great card, but it's playable. Oh, the next one though, Ishkanah Graph Widow, 400 green for a 3/5 with reach. And Delirium, you get 3/1/2 spiders. And if that wasn't enough, you can pay 6 and a black to have target opponent loses 1 life for each spider you control. So that includes this card and the spiders you got. So if you can get Delirium, this is an A. Because it's just almost impossible to lose. This card was played in Constructed too. And so it's like a build around A, where I really want to have ways to get Delirium. Even if I'm not a dedicated Delirium deck, I'm still gonna play it because I'm just gonna randomly get the Delirium. And if worse comes worse, you can play this as a Mammoth Spider that can deal your opponent 1 damage. But this is a build around A. It's just a fantastic card. It's almost impossible to lose after you cast this with Delirium, because you're getting 4 reach creatures with high toughness. And then you can start. So the problem with reach creatures is that you have a hard time killing your opponent sometimes, but then you have the last ability for 7 mana, and combining this card with reanimation is just absurd. So A for Ishkanah. Moonlight Hunt, 100 green. Choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control has a wolf or a werewolf, this damage equal to its power to that creature. So in a wolf or werewolf deck, this is basically just a terminate, so it's like a B. And if you have like again 10 werewolves or werewolves, it's like a C+. If you don't have too many werewolves, I would be wary of playing this. I think I would want at least 5 wolves or werewolves before I would put this card in my deck. But it's like a very good card if you have a lot. Noose Constrictor, 100 green 2/2 reach. Discard a card, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's like a wild mongrel. But instead of changing colors, it gets reach. This card is just great. It's like a bee. It just does everything. It even blocks flyers, and it can threaten to become huge. Works if you are red-green madness. It enables a Delirium, and it just threatens to block. Late in the game you can even stockpile lands, so very good card. Another good card is Obsessive Skinner. It's a common now, it used to be uncommon. 100 green for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it could be itself. So by already it's like a C-, it's okay. But then if you got Delirium, you gotta put a counter on a creature every upkeep, and that's just great. So this is, I think it's like a C+. It's a decent card early, but then late game it turns into a fantastic card. It's just Luminarch Aspirant style effect. Of course, it's not gonna happen until your opponent's upkeep, but sometimes you will get Delirium during your turn, and it wouldn't have happened during your upkeep anyway. So yeah, good card, C+. Another great card is Pack Guardian, 2 green for a 4/3 with flash, so it might actually ambush something. Unlike the blue flyer, it's gonna happen more often. And then you can discard a land card when it comes to play, and do get a wolf, also at instant speed. Fantastic card, it's like a B. It also, when you discard a land, you're getting closer to Delirium. You're not paying a cost here for a fantastic card. Has ambush potential. For 4 mana, you're getting 6/5 worth of stats if you can afford to discard a land, which it's gonna not happen every time, but most of the time. Perm Eating Mass, green for a 1/3. When it is combat damage for a creature, that creature becomes a copy of Perm Eating Mass. So this is almost like a 1/3 Death Toucher, except your opponent's creature turns into discard, which can also be a little annoying for you. So I don't think this card is great. It's like a D+. The problem with this card is that it also doesn't have any reach, any evasion. If you attack with it, your opponent can just take it. It's hard to engineer this card to be good. You only have to pay 1 mana, but your opponent can ignore it. So okay, I'm gonna give it a C-. It's just a 1-drop, so it can't be that bad, but it's not that great. And the fact that the ability doesn't have to be an upside. If your opponent blocks this card with like a 2/2, then your opponent has this 1/3 that can be annoying for you. And they didn't even have to pay any mana for it. So C-, not a great card. Rabbit Bite, 100 green. Target creature you control is damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Pretty solid card, C+. I remember this card being better in this set than it was been in the later sets, just because the green had some big creatures. Seasons Past. This is one of the sweetest cards ever in Limited. And it even was played in Construct. 4 green sorcery. Return any number of cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand, and you put Seasons Past on the bottom of its owner's library. So you can't even get decked again. Very sweet. So you can get 0 drops as a land. It can help you cast your cards. You can get a 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, 5 drop, and so on. Very sweet card. It's very slow though, but I think it's worth it. And if I have Seasons Past, I'm gonna plan for the late game, because I know that I'm gonna have this card that gives me back all this value. You can get back a deadweight maybe. So maybe black-green is a good place for it. You can get back a deadweight, a 2-mana creature, 3-mana removal spell, 4-mana creature, and so on. And you can't even get decked, which is also sweet. So I think it's like a build around B, where in a right dirtly grindy deck it can be a fantastic card. And if I see it, I'm gonna take it and just build a sweet deck around it. You wanna be slow, controlling, have defensive speed, but it's just great. It probably is more sweet than it is good. So my grade of B might be over exaggerating it, because if your opponent is aggressive, this is not a card that you want, but you can make up for it with defensive speed. Second Harvest, 2 green. For each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So it's like a one-shot doubling Seasons. It's an F, it's just not good. Maybe you can once in a moon make a super heavy token deck, but I don't think so. Spirit of the Hunt, 1 green for a 3/3 with flash, so more ambush potential here. And when it enters the battlefield, each other creature you control is a wolf or a werewolf is +0/+3 until end of turn. I will put this in all my green decks, but this gets even better in a wolf werewolf deck. You can get some. This is like the white mediocre card on steroids. It's solid. It's like a B-. A 3/3 flash for free is just good, and pumping other things. So yeah, okay, B- in a wolf werewolf deck. Also like this C+ maybe. Splendid Reclamation, 3 green, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. Unfortunately an F, because even if you could return a bunch of lands, what do you do then? So it's like a very situational ramp spell that doesn't even do anything. Let's say you haven't even put anything in your graveyard. You can't play a card like that, so it's an F. Swift Spinner, this is the 3rd flashed creature now in green. 3 green for a 2/3 flash reach. So be aware when you play against green how there's a bunch of flashed creatures. This eats flyers. This is not a great card, I don't think. It's more like a sideboard card. So if you play against a deck with flyers, you can side it in maybe. It's like a C-, pretty mediocre. 4 Night Wolves, 4 green for a 4/5. It is a wolf, so it has a relevant creature type. It's like a C-, D+, C-, I think. Tireless Tracker, ooh, this card. 2 green for a 3/2. Landfall. Whenever a land and spell from your control, you investigate. And when you sacrifice a clue, you put a counter on it. This is an A-. It's just so insanely good. Whenever you get a clue from lands, that helps you draw into more lands, which gives you more clues. And this creature becomes big and can block your opponent's creature. So A- for Tireless Tracker. Fantastic card. Traverse the Ulvenwald, green for a sorcery. Search the library for basic land card, reveal, put into your hand and shuffle. And Delirium, you can actually search your library for any creature or land card. It's a decent card. It's like the Thirsting Roots from this set. It's a card you can replace a land with. And then later in the game you can get a creature. Gets a little better if you got a Bombi creature, maybe the next one. But it's not awesome. I think it's a C+ though. Pretty solid. It's more solid than good. You could get up to B- if you A, have an easy time getting Delirium, and B, have a Bombi creature to get. Like this one, Ulvenwald Hydra, 4 green for a star reach. And its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So it's probably a 6/6 at least. But you can also search the library for a land card when it comes into play. Put it into the library, tap and shuffle. So make that a 7/7. Fantastic card. You are putting this huge reach creature into play, 7/7 for 6. That also gonna get bigger as the game goes on. So I think it doesn't get to A-, but it gets like a B+. It just stabilizes you so well. You get a land, you get stabilized board. Eventually this is gonna be a 10/10, and then you can put your opponent in the abyss. So B+. Ulvenwald Mysteries, 2 and a green enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. So that's can happen several times a turn. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, you get a 1/1 human. So that's sort of like gaining life in some sense. Like you compare this to the ongoing investigations in that 1/1 is a shumper. Or you can trade with it, hopefully. Maybe gang block something. But in a dedicated clue deck, this is really good. It's like a B-. I think it's like a build around B even. In a dedicated deck that can get clues from other stuff, it's even better. But even this by itself is not a bad card. So I think this is solid build around B. Next is Vessel of Nascency, aka the Delirium Enabler. Because this is an enchantment. You can pay 1 and green, sacrifice it, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. And you can choose an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. You only get 1. And you put the rest into your graveyard. So after you crack this, you have an enchantment, and you have 3 other cards that put into your graveyard. I remember, whenever I cracked this card, I almost always got Delirium afterwards. So in a Delirium deck, I think this is a B-. It's just so important. You are paying 3 mana to not affect the board, but you immediately get Delirium, and you may even find a creature that has some payoff for Delirium. And they actually upshifted this to uncommon. It used to be a common, which I think says a lot. I think this is a B- in a Delirium deck. And if you're not a Delirium deck, it's probably a little too dirty to play. Maybe you can play it if you got a Bombi creature, like the Hydra. It's like a C or something. But really important card for the Delirium decks. Because Enchantment is a card that is hard to get. Veteran Qatar, 1 and green for 2/2, 3 no white, target human gains double strike at the end of turn. This is a human too, so you can target itself. It's okay, it's like the Hamlet Captain, it's like a C+ in a human deck. The ability is powerful and there is some threat of activation, but it also is pretty expensive. So you probably can't do this more than once each turn. But it's okay. So we go from Durdling, aggressive card into Durdling, into another aggressive card. Weirding Wood, 2 and a green, enchant land. Whenever it enters the battlefield, investigate. Enchanted land has tap 2 mana of any one color. So you're at the end of it up a card, you're getting a clue that you can crack for a card. Maybe it enables you. Clue synergies. You also can getting an extra mana. This is very clunky and dirtly. I think it's like a C in a clue deck, and it's like a D in a normal green deck. The mana can be nice in a clue deck because you want the mana to crack it, but you need some payoffs to get you the time back. So if I got the ongoing investigations or like the Ulvenwald Mysteries, it's okay. Wolfkin Bond, now we go to another aggressive card. 4 and a green for an enchant creature. When it ends the battle, you get a 2/2 wolf, and the card creature get +2/+2. I don't think this card is particularly good. Yes, you're creating a wolf and you're getting some stats, but you are paying 5 mana, you're exposed to instant speed removal, and even if your opponent has sorcery speed removal, you're left with a 2/2. So it's not great. It's a D+, I think. Alright, so let's look at the double-faced cards. We have Duskwatch Recruiter. That's a great card. 1 and a green for 2/2. You can pay 3 mana, 2 and a green, look at the top 3 cards of the library, put a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. You're pretty likely to hit. 3 cards is a lot, and your deck is probably around 60% creatures. So I'm not going to do the math, but I remember hitting most of the time I activated that. But if no spells were cast, it flips into this 3 that make creature cards use spells cost 1 less. And then it flips back. So this might flip back and forth sometimes, but on the front side you can dig for creatures, and on the back side it's a little larger and you make the creatures you got cheaper. So when you're activating the ability of this, it might flip, so it becomes better defensively and can cause a creature. I think this is about a B. I remember being super happy with this card, because you only ask you to play a 2/2 for 2, and then you're getting this upside on top of that. So good card. Hinterland Logger, 1 and a green 2/1. And it flips into a 4/2 trample. I was never a fan of this card. I think it's a little too aggressive. I think it's like a C-, D+. Sage of Ancient Lord. 4 and a green for a star, has power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand, but when it enters the battlefield you draw a card. So that's already a decent card. It's gonna probably be like a 4/4 the turn it comes into play, and then it might shrink later, but you can also attack with this before you play your land, or you can hold lands in your hand, so you have some control over how large it's gonna be. But it's also werewolf, so it's gonna flip into a vigilance trample that is equal to the number of cards in all players' hands, which might give you some extra bonus, depending on how many cards are in your opponent's hand. I think this is a B. It's a really solid card. You're up a card. You have to be a little bit careful to not shrink it too much. So if you play this attack and your opponent blocks, you may not want to play cards post-combat. But it's solid B. Shrill Howler, 2 and a green for a free one. Creatures with power less than Shrill Howler's power can't block it. So it's like a reverse Skulk. And then you pay 6 mana, transform it into a 3/5 with power less, can't block it. And when this comes, I should play create 3/2 colorless draws. I think this card is mediocre. It just gets blanked and it's a free one. Yes, you probably can't block it with 1/1s, but you are asking a lot here, and there's not that huge of a payoff anyway. So I think it's a C-. Ulvamore Captive, really nice card. 1 and green for a 1/2 defender, and you can tap it to add green. So like the Deathcap Culto, which I will always play this in a green deck. But then you can pay 7 mana and transform it into a 4/6 that taps for double color. So it's almost like it's gonna get the same grade as the Cultivator, like a B-, because it's a mana dork early and becomes irrelevant late. And that's just a good deal. Alright, so now what? We're gonna go to Multicolored. Alright. Altered Ego. X2 green blue. 0/0. Can't be countered. And it enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature except it has X counters on it. Really solid card. It's like a clone, but it also gets additional bonuses with X. So if you have extra mana, you can make it even bigger. I think it's a B. Clones are good, and this one has extra upside. Can't be countered and becomes even bigger if you got spare mana. And if you want to play it on turn 4, it's fine. Anguished Unmaking. Oh, they made this uncommon. 1 black, white for an instant. External target non permanent, you lose 3 life. It's okay. It's I think it's worse than it looks. It's paying 3 life is huge, and it's also kind of hard to cast. But I think it's about a I think it's like a B-. It's solid, but it's the 3 life matters. Bloodhole Priest, 2 black red for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, if you have no cards in hand, it deals 2 damage to any target, which is probably more likely to happen on attacks, because then you can play a land, play a spell maybe. But it has -1 black red. In a black red deck, this is like a B+. It's a really solid card. It's hard to get the trigger sometimes, but you also have the option to madness it, and it's a good card. Definitely, if I see it pick one, pack one, I would probably take it. Fueled Visions, interesting one. 1 blue red for an enchantment. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. So that's a Holding Mine, but you get to draw the card first, so it's a little better than Holding Mine. If the player is your opponent has 4 more cards in hand, it deals 2 damage to that player. This is a build around. You want to play it with cheap cards, and you can also be pretty good with burn spells. Because if you're playing it with cheap cards, you can empty your hand often. And with burn spells, it also may happen that your opponent takes 2 a couple of times. Fantastic with bounce spells, because you can bounce your opponent's creatures. Since you're both drawing extra cards, you don't care that you're down a card, and it also makes it more likely your opponent's going to take 2. So it's like a build around B, I think. It can be really good in a if you have cheap cards, bounce spells, and burn spells. I wouldn't play it in a control deck though. Yisa and Geralf, 2 black, blue for a 4/4. When it ends the battlefield, you mill 4 cards. So it's like a better version of that blue common, because it has 1 more power and toughness. But once during each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature spell from your graveyard. So in a zombie deck, this is like a B+. And if I have like 2 zombies in my deck, it goes down to like a C+. But I would always play it in a blue-black deck, even if I didn't have too many zombies, because it's a 4/4 that mills 4. That's probably good for your synergies. So it has a range of C+ to B+, I think. depending on how many zombies you have. But if you have 7 or 8 zombies, it goes up to the high B range. Grim Flayer, black-green for a 2/2 trample. And whenever it is common to play Surveil free, which could happen on turn 3, if you're on the play especially. And then Delirium, it gets +2/+2, if you have 4 more cards type. As some of these cards, this is not as good as in Limited as in Constructed. It's of course very good in black-green. It's like a B, but a B- maybe. Because it's hard to get this to attack. Unlike in Constructed, where you can play this on turn 2 and then follow up with removal spell and then Surveil, and then you have other ways to Delirium. If you have an easy time getting to Delirium, it's about a B, I think. It's good, but don't overrate it. Heroes Grey's Champion. 2 green-white for a 3/3 flash lifelink. Another flash card. And returns to the battlefield. All the humans you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink at the end of turn. So a 3/3 flash lifelink for 4 is good. It's not amazing. I think it's about a C+, and the ability could be good in a human's deck. So in a human's deck, it's probably like a B-, otherwise like a C+. But if you ambush something, it's gonna feel really good. Maybe I should probably give it a B-, just for the blowout potential. Mercurial Geist, 2 blue-red for a 1/3 flyer. And when you cast an instant to sorcery, it gets +3/+0. Very powerful in the blue-red spell stacks, of course. It's gonna routinely attack for 4, could even be 7. And combined with pump spell, it's even more. So it's like a build around B in a blue-red deck because it kills your opponent so fast. It's not unreasonable to cast 2 spells. Morn Willow, 1 black-green for a 3/2 haste. And Delirium, creatures with power 2 or less can't block this turn. This is not a great card. A 3/2 haste for 3/2 in a Delirium deck is not something I'm super excited about. And the last ability, if it were all creatures, it would be okay. I think it's like a C. It's okay. It's a card you can put in your deck. It has some utility, but it's not a great card. It's like a C. Nahiri the Harbinger, 2 red-white for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. +2, you may discard a card if you draw a card. So you're not up cards, but you're up selection. Red-white might not be the best home for Delirium, but you may have some cards. And if it goes up to 6 loyalty, which is a lot, so it's going to be hard to kill. -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact or tapped creature. So that's a defensive ability in an aggressive color. Still good though. Even red-white gets attacked sometimes. And if your opponent's got an enchantment, you can take that. -8, search the library for an artifact or creature card, put it onto the battlefield and shuffle. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next sense. So that's a combo with Emrakul in Constructed. It's not unreasonable to do that, especially if you got some bomb. But Nahiri is good. I don't think it's up to the bomb level like Liliana. I think Nahiri is like a B. It also is a little off the place in red-white. I would never cut it from a red-white deck, but I don't think it gets to AS because the abilities are not backbreaking, if you know what I mean. Neither of the 3 abilities are like blowing me away. They are good, but I think it's a B. Olivia mobilized for war. Now this card is a beating. 1 black-red for a 3/3 flyer, already great. But whenever another creature enters the battlefield you control, you may discard a card, which works with Madness, which is in the black-red colors. And if you do put a +1/+1 count on that creature against haste, it becomes a vampire. And you can do that on turn 4, so your opponent's going to take a lot of damage. I think it's an A-, fantastic card. Priced Amalgam, 1 blue-black for a 3/3. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it enters from your graveyard and casts from your graveyard, return Priced Amalgam from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. So we're looking at a 3/3 for 3, okay. You have some cards, you have like the Stitches that comes back, the Haunted Dead, you have some Reanimator spells. I think if you got some ways to get this back, it could sneak up to like a C+. I think it's like a C. 1 blue-black for a 3/3 is around a C. It's a zombie though. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna give it a C+. I think it's solid, but if you see Olivia, pick one, you're gonna slam it and be very happy, build around it. If you see Priced Amalgam, pick one, it's gonna be a lot of cards that we're gonna take over it, you know. Ride Down, red-white for an instant. Now this is much more red-white than Nahiri. Destroy target blocking creatures. Creatures that are blocked by that creature this combat gains trample until end of turn. So unlike some of the cards I talked about earlier, like Puncturing Light and other cards, this card actually gets around your opponent getting to block because the creature gains trample. So it's like if the creature didn't block. I think it's solid. I think it's like a C+. I'm not blown away by Ride Down. At the end of the day, it's a situational removal spell. It does nothing if you are... it does nothing if you are behind. And also if your opponent doesn't cooperate, doesn't block in the right way. It's not a Terminate, if you know what I mean. So I think Ride Down is a C+, but I'm not... It's not like a super good card. Because unlike Terminate, you can't just at will kill the thing you want to kill all the time. Sigarda Heron's Grace. 3 green white for a 4/5 flying. You and humans you control have hexproof. Sort of irrelevant in some sense because your opponent's gonna kill this creature most likely. But I guess you can't get mind rotted or burned. But you can pay to exile a card from your graveyard, create a 1/1 human solo creature token. So that's hexproof. Yeah, this is an A. It's a 4/5 flyer for 5 that you only take at exile a card to get a 1/1. So you can just get chump blockers for days. And yeah, it's an A, I think. Soaring Grim Nemesis, probably another A. 4 white black for 6 loyalty. So there's a lot of loyalty. +1 reveal top card of the library, put that card in your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its mana value. So you're drawing a card plus dealing some amount of damage to your opponent. Nice, goes up to 7 then. -X, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life. So that kills most things. And you can -5 and then still keep Sorin. You're gaining a bunch of life. Very nice. -9, create a number of 1/1 black man per night. To the tokens with lifelink equal to the highest life total among all players. Okay. Yeah, you probably, if you have played Saurian plus 3 times, maybe you need a -9 not to deck, but yeah, you're probably gonna kill your opponent with a +1 dealing damage. That's sort of irrelevant. But it looks like another A. I don't see how you can play Saurian and lose the game. It almost seems impossible. Spell Queller, 1 white blue for a 2/3 flash flyer. A lot of flash creatures in this set. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell with mana value 4 or less, and when it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner may cast the card without paying its mana. Rock solid. The spell may not be gone forever, but it's gonna be a while, and you're not paying a price here. Your 2/3 flash flyer is already a good card. It's like a Soaring Great with flash. I think it's like a B+ again. Don't get any higher, but B+ seems good. Because sometimes you may counter a card that doesn't work when your opponent tries to cast it again. Maybe you counter like a counter spell or a pump spell, and the card doesn't do anything when it comes back. Tamio, Field Researcher, 1 and banned, 1 green, white, blue, 4 loyalty, +1 you choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage you draw a card. So you can target your opponent's creatures, and if your opponent wants to attack you get to draw a card or block. Or you can target your own creatures, and it's not combat damage to a player. So I can see you drawing 2 cards from that. -2, you tap 2 permanents, non-land, and then don't untap. Okay, that works if you're behind or if you want to push damage. And -7, draw 3 cards, you get an M-node, you may cast spell from your hand without paying the mana cost. Very powerful. Again, I don't really see you gonna +3 3 times, then do that. Okay. Tamio is, if you can cast, it's probably pretty good. I think it's about a B. It's less powerful than like Sorin or Liliana the Last Hope, but it does things. It's just a little... It seems more contextual. If you don't have a board present, this card doesn't do much because the +1, your opponent can just choose not to attack with those, maybe have developed the board. And the -2 doesn't do much if you're not ahead. So it's like a 3-color planeswalker that requires you to have a board state. I think it's good though if you're playing those colors and have a good amount of creatures. Alright, we got some multicolored flip cards here. First, Arling Cord, 2 red-green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker with 2 abilities. +1 until end of turn, up to 1 target creature get +2/+2 against Vigilance and Haste. Okay. That's okay. It doesn't create any board state, but it does give you a creature that gets bigger. It gets Vigilance. The +2/+2 doesn't last during your opponent's turn though. But it's okay. 0, you get a 2/2 wolf. Okay, so this card seems okay. If you play this and can make a wolf and protect it, you can make a wolf every turn. It seems solid. And then it flips if no one casts a spell into a 0 loyalty, but I guess it keeps the loyalty from the front side. I guess. Yeah, it has, otherwise it's dead. +1 creature you control, +1/+1 gains trample until end of turn. That's solid. -1, it deals 3 damage to any target, and it transforms back. That seems like the mode you want to use. And -6, you get an emblem with creature you control have haste, and tap this creature this damage equal to its power to any target. That seems unbeatable, but you have to play Arlene and plus it on the front side to get the, or front plus it on the back side. It seems like a A-. It doesn't protect itself too well. It makes tokens, but they don't have reach and they're kind of small. And the +1 is, yeah, it seems good, but it's not a bomb. It's not of the absolute bombs. It's a bomb, but not one of the absolute biggest bombs, I guess. There's one more multicolored. There's also a red-green werewolf. Earlrish of the Krallen Horde. 3 red-green, 4/4. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms, target creature is +4/+4 until end of turn. So you can pump something else. That seems good. And then it flips into a 6/6. Then it fights whenever it transforms. And it seems like it's gonna kill almost anything. Because it's gonna deal 6. And this card has 6 toughness. So this card seems like an A- again. It seems fantastic on both fronts. You play it as a 4/4 that pumps up something, gets in for huge. And you can just not play any spells and then it turns to a 6/6 that kills something. Oh yeah. Okay, you have some colorless cards here and they're mostly emerge creatures. So with emerge you can either cast them for the cost in the upper right corner, or you can emerge them. So the first is Abundant Maw, so you can pay 8 mana for a 6/4 that drains for free. That doesn't seem very good. You're just paying too much. That seems like a D-, but it has Emerge 6 and a black, so you have to sacrifice a creature, and you can reduce the cost from the color requirements. Let me just... Yeah, right, so if you sacrifice a 3-drop, like the blue card, creature that lets you draw a card, it costs 4. That's much better. This doesn't seem like... I think I want a card of value, and draining for free is nice, but I think this is about a C-, so I'm not super excited about it. Decimator of Promises. Now we have a Mythic. 10 mana, 7/7. When you cast a spell, creature you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. So that includes itself. Trample Haste, so it's like a 9/9 Trample Haste. No, because when you cast it, it's not on the battlefield. So this is just a 7/7. But either way, it buffs your team, and it has a Merge 6 green. Probably want to be emerging this one, because 10 mana is a lot. But if you sacrifice like a 4-drop, it's gonna cost 5. That seems good. I would want a lot of creatures. I would want expendable creatures to sacrifice. Then I think it's like a B+. Distended Mindbender. 8 mana for a 5/5. Emerge 5 black. When you cast a spell, target opponent reads their hand. You choose from the non-card mana value 3 or less and a card with mana value 4 or greater. That player discards those cards. So you can't wait too long with this card, because then you're not gonna get too many good cards from your opponent. But if you cast this on like turn 5, you're probably gonna get at least 1 card. And if you cast this on turn 3, that's gonna be hard. On turn 4, I think it's the earliest you can realistically play this. You sacrifice a 3-drop, then it costs 4. You have to have double block too. So I think this could be very powerful, like a B+ in a dedicated emerge deck, but you want to be able to cast it on turn 4 or at least turn 5. Drown Your Behemoth, 9 mana, 5/7 flash, emerge 7. Another flash card. And there's another one coming up too. And it has Hexproof as long as it enters the battlefield this turn. So you're really gonna get to ambush something with this card, because it has Hexproof and it's a 5/7. But the 7 blue emerge cost, and even if you ambush something, you are sacrificing a creature. But then you're left with a big card. I think this card is solid, though. I think it's like a C+. Might be, if you're playing as blue, you might want to play around this. Elder Deep Fiend. 8 mana for a 5/6 flash emerge, another flash card. When you cast a spell, tap up to 4 target permanents. Wow. So you can do this in the upkeep tap lands. You can also tap creatures in combat. I think this card is just great. I think it's like an A-. It's gonna win the game in so many scenarios. You can ambush something, or you can tap creatures. You can even ambush in combat, tap lands. And if your opponent didn't play creatures before combat, which is usually what you don't do, you might get like a Time Walk and eat something. So A- on that card. Emrakul, the Promised End, a Mythic. 13 mana, 13/13. Costs 1 less to cost for each card type when cards in your graveyard. And when you cast a spell, you gain control of target opponent during that play's next turn. After the turn, that play takes an extra turn. Flying, trample, protection from instant. So you can get this down to like 9 mana realistically, maybe 8. And at that point it is worth it. So I would have to be very heavy on Delirium, but even then it's gonna be expensive. I think Emrakul is gonna be an F in most decks, but it could also be like a builder on B, because when you cast this you get to make all the attacks. You can play a removal spell that hurts your opponent. And you have a 13/13 flying trapper protect from instant. That's going to be able to eat something. So I think it's like a build around B+. If you have Delirium deck that also has defensive speed. Eternal Scourge. This is not an emerge card. It's a 3 mana 3/3. You may cast it from exile. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability and opponents control, exile Eternal Scourge. So it's like a 3/3 that dies to anything that targets it. But then you can cast it again. So is that a downside? It could be an upside if you find a way to exile it. So if you play this, trade it off, then find a way to exile it, you can play it again. But most of this seems like a 3/3 for free with a little bit of downside. So I think it's like a D+, C-. Maybe you can combo it with some ways to exile your own graveyard. But I don't know how many cards there are like that. I guess it's pretty good against removal spells, because if your opponent casts a real removal spell on this card, you're gonna exile it and then you get to play it again. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna give it a C-, I think. Mockery of Nature, 9 mana 6/5, emerge 7 and green. When you cast a spell, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. This almost feels like a sideboard card, because you don't, if you can cast this and not getting to blow up something, it's not good. So I think it's like a sideboard C+. It's still not backbreaking when you do that, because you have sacrificing a creature. You're probably not casting it for 9, right? Wretched Griff, 7 mana 3/4, emerge 5 and a blue. When you cast a spell, draw a card. Okay, seems good. 6 mana is pretty cheap. You can cast this on turn 4 for 3 mana, draw a card. Seems like a C+ to me. Alright, we have Colorless Meld. Cryptolith Fragment. 3 mana artifact, ends the battlefield tapped. At a moment of any color, each player loses 1 life. So it's a mana lift that makes each player lose 1 life. And then if a player has 10 or less life, it should be either player, transform it into a 1/3 flying death touch. When it attacks, each opponent loses 3 life. So that's almost like a 4 power flyer. This card seems good. I mean, it's a slow, it's bad as a mana rock. It's almost more tempting what it does when it flips. I think it's about a C+ in the right deck. It seems like it does a lot of work. It ramps you, it turns into this threat. Because eventually someone's going to have 10 or less life, especially when each player loses 1 life. And that in combination with the last thing, this card just seems good. I think it's got like a C+. Okay, we have Harvest Hand, 3 mana 2/2. When it dies, return it transformed as a equipment. Equip creature gets +1/+1. Equip 2. Seems mediocre. It's a 2/2 for free that flips into a pretty bad equipment. Seems like a D+ to me. Neglected Heirloom, 1 mana artifact. Equip creature gets +1/+1. Equip is 1. When it equip creature transforms, you transform this into Ashmouth Blade. Equip creature gets +3/+3 and equips for free. And I think if a creature transforms it, this equipment stays on that card. This card seems decent. I mean, a 1 mana equipment that gives +1/+1 is okay already. It's like a C-, but then the extra ability. I mean, it seems really good in a werewolf deck. In a werewolf deck, I would give it like a B-, and in a regular, will be like a C. Okay, we have artifacts. And first is Brain in a Jar. What is this? 2-mana artifact, 1 tap with a charge count on Brain in a Jar. Then you may cast an instant sorcery with spell with mana value equal to the number of charge counts on Brain in a Jar from your hand without paying its mana cost. Seems bad. It's gonna take slow, and you might at that point you might just cast them anyway. Remove X counts for Brain in a Jar, scry X. This card seems bad. It seems slow, clunky, and you're not even up cards. You're up some scries. I think I'm gonna give it an F. Stitches Graphs, 1-mana artifact, equip creature gets +3/+3, equip 2. Probably some downside here. Whenever equip creature attacks, it doesn't untap during its control's next unstep step. And whenever you unattach it from a permanent, sacrifice a permanent. Weird. So 1 mana to play, 2 mana to equip, gets +3/+3. So your opponent takes the damage, it doesn't untap, and if you re-equip, you sacrifice the creature. But I guess then you can let it stay tapped for a turn and then attack again. I think it has some potential. I think it's hard to grade this card. I think I'm going to give it like a C+. I think it's powerful, but it does create some awkward scenarios. It's probably better if you're aggressive, because then maybe you can justify re-equipping it and get in for another big hit. So if you're aggressive, it's probably like a B-. Otherwise, it's like a C. Tamiya's Journal, 5 mana. At the beginning of your up, you investigate. So eventually you're going to be up a card. Sacrifice 3 clues, search the library for a card, put a card into your hand and shuffle. That's nice if you don't have the time to crack the clues. This card seems nice. I like the second ability if you just don't have the time to crack all the clues. Maybe you have some clues from other stuff. I think it's like a B. A B in a clue deck. Terrarion, 1-mana artifact. Instant battlefield tap. Tap sacrifice, you get 2 mana and a combination of colors, and you get to draw a card. So it's also nice with Delirium. Puts an artifact in your graveyard. And you're not down a card. You're only down a mana, because you're getting the mana back. Seems like a low opportunity cost. If you want to fix your mana, it's good. I think it's like a C. True Faith Sensor, 2 mana for an equipment. Equip creature gets +1/+1 at Vigilance, and it says human gets additional +1/+0, equip 2. So 2 mana to play, 2 mana to equip. If it's a human, it's pretty good. If you're a human deck, I think it's a C+. Seems like pretty good. Otherwise, it's like C-. I think 2 mana to play, 2 mana to equip, +1/+1 Vigilance is not that good. Wildfield Scarecrow, 3 mana 1 for Defender, 2 sacrifice it, search life up to 2 basic land reveal and put them into your hand and shuffle. So it's like a Burnished Heart, except it goes into your hand and it has Defender. Yes, it's an artifact. This seems like a bad card, or so slow. I think it's a D+. Epitaph Column, I remember this one. 5 mana 3/5. 2 mana put a card from your grave on the bottom of your library. So if you're not doing some crazy stuff, it's like a D. But I remember this being a centerpiece of my self-mill deck. So it's like a build around C+, where it's probably an important piece of some cards that want to mill yourself heavily every turn. But it's not a good card. I would probably like to wheel it. Explosive Apparatus, 1-mana artifact, 3 tap, sacrifice it, deals 2 damage to any target. Again, Delirium, but yeah, in a Delirium deck it's like a C-, otherwise it's just too clunky and bad. Field Creeper, what a creep. 2 mana 2/1 artifact. Even if I'm Delirium, I don't think I want to play a card like this, like a D+. Looping Prototype, 2 mana 5/5. It can't attack or block unless a player has no cards in hand. Huh. So you can play this early, it's not going to do anything until you have no cards in hand. And at that point a 5/5 is good, but how good is it? My instinct says that this card isn't great. I think it's like a D. The problem with this card is it's not going to do anything until turn 6. And then it's going to be able to attack. But how good is a 5/5 at that point? It's like a suspend creature almost. I think it's not good, it's like a D. Magnifying Glass, 3 mana artifact. Taps for a colorless, 4 tap investigate. See, I like this much less than the Fragment, because this doesn't tap for any colors, and it's super slow. It's like a D. Very clunky. Murderous Axe, 4 mana artifact equipment. Equip creature +2/+2, equip, discard a card. So I probably would only play this in a Madness deck. but it seems like a card I'm only gonna play if I'm desperate for madness outlets. It is decent there, but it seems like a build around C, where in a madness deck I may want. Slayer's Plate, 3 mana artifact equipment, equip creature +4/+2, equip 3. I'm already kind of interested. I think already it's like a C+, B-. Whenever it dies, if it was a human, you get a 1/1 spirit. So I think this is like a C+ in a regular deck. In a human deck is probably like a B-. Soul Separator, 3 mana artifact, 5 tap, sacrifice it, exile a creature from the graveyard, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 1/1. And then you get a zombie. So you get a 1/1 with abilities and a zombie that's as big. Seems like a very clunky reanimation spell, where you might get some additional value, but that seems like an F, honestly. So let's see. Oh, I already did artifact. Okay, so there's only lands left. There is the cycle of lands that comes into play. Choked Estuary. As Choked Estuary enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or swamp from your hand. If you don't, it comes into play taps for blue and a black. It looks like slightly better than a random Tranquil Cove. So it's like a C+ probably, if you want to splash. Doesn't seem great. And then we have exactly these cards. Forsaken Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped, adds white or black. Seems like a C- to me. If you really are in those colors, it might be like a C. But you're not getting any life, you're not getting any scry, you're not getting any sacrifice. We've gone a long way since then. There's a cycle, so all enemy colors have those, and the friendly colors have the. Then we have Gaia Rich Sanitarium, taps for colorless. 2 tap, each player draws a card and discards a card. So if I'm a madness deck, I probably want this, because I can use this at the perfect moment when I can madness something. So if I'm a madness deck, I think it's about a C+ if my mana is good. If my mana is good, it might be a B-. If my mana is a little shaky, it's like a C+. I might not even play it. But I'm not gonna play. Maybe Gaia Rich Sanitarium is just good in any deck that has good mana. So if I'm playing any deck that has solid mana, maybe I already have like a dual. Seems like a bonus. You can use this when it's not a great ability, but it's like a C in decks with good mana, I think. Alright, so do we have any land cards that meld? I think we have Westvale Abbey at least. Oh, we have Hand Battlements. So that's a land. So that's for colorless, and then red tap target against haste until end of turn. Seems okay. If I'm a red deck with good mana, I'm probably gonna play this about at like a C+. But then if you own and control Hand Battlements, you flip it into a 7 for trample haste. So if I have that, I'm gonna play this like a B-. But if I'm playing red and have good mana, it's very powerful to have a land that gives haste for free. Then it's like a C+. And then finally we have Westvale Abbey. Rare land. Taps for colorless, 5 tap, pay 1 life, create a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token. That's probably something I'm only gonna do when I'm completely running out of things to do. And then you can pay 5 tap, sacrifice 5 creatures, transform it into a Ormondal Profane Prince, flying lifelink, indestructible haste. Yeah, that seems sick. This card seems great. I don't think you need. Just as long as I have enough creatures in my deck, I'm gonna play it. I'm not gonna play it in a control deck. But having a land that you can just randomly turn into an indestructible flying lifelink seems great. So it's like a B. If my mana is good, it's like a B. If my mana is good and I have a lot of creatures, it's like a B. Alright, this was my first full set review of a set. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want, you can make a comment and I'll make a similar set review for the newest set.